Chapter 51. Looking at the master and the apprentice who were already walking towards the rare treasures around, Douluo thought about it and followed them. Since the two knew each other, he was also curious about what the fairy grass they were talking about was. He wanted to know what the plants that made Guangling want to kill him. He could only see that these plants were very precious, but he really didn't know them and didn't dare to touch them casually. The last time he accidentally walked near a plant, it almost took his life directly, causing the poison in his body to surge. It was just getting close and touching some pollen, so he could only pick some that he knew to use. Of course, he still harvested some medicinal herbs that he didn't know, but he hadn't had time to study them. And he had a bit of a bad intention. Anyway, now he knew some things, and he was determined to hug his thighs, so knowing a little more would make no difference. Seeing Douluo also followed, the master and the apprentice did not say anything. Anyway, they had made the decision to accept him. Some things could not be hidden. It was just the right opportunity to test Douluo's quality and decide on their attitude towards him in the future. The master and the apprentice looked at each other and cast their eyes on the large light pink flower. Under Guangling's gaze, Han Li walked over directly, took out a flower pot and a shovel, and transplanted it into the flower pot with the surrounding soil. Douluo's eyes followed his actions and saw the large light pink flower, without leaves, with a 3-foot-long stem, and a huge flower with a diameter of a foot. Each petal looked as crystal clear as crystal, and the stamens were light purple, like purple diamonds inlaid there. What kind of flower is this? Seeing that the master and the apprentice had no intention of introducing it, Douluo couldn't help asking. The fragrant Douluo fairy product, the nemesis of all poisons, has the effect of neutralizing all toxins. It cannot detoxify itself, but it can overcome poisons. Han Li did not stop digging and answered without turning his head. The nemesis of all poisons. Douluo's face flashed with a hint of desire, and his feet unconsciously took a few steps forward, wanting to go over and take a look. His brain automatically ignored Han Li's subsequent words. "Stupid, do you want to die?" Guangling's voice accompanied by a sharp arrow flew past Douluo's eyes, waking up Douluo who was still fantasizing. He turned his head with some shame and annoyance, and heard Guangling continue to say, "Didn't you hear Xiao Li say that it can't detoxify? Is your brain also stupid because of the poison? Or do you want to die now?" Douluo's face turned red and white, but under the threat of Guangling's force, he dared not refute. He believed that if he took another step forward, his head would be shot. At this time, Han Li also completed the transplantation, stood up and turned around. He did not put it away, but just walked back holding the flower pot, looked at Douluo, and said nothing. "Master, you choose the immortal herbs first. Xiao Li, take a look at what you need first." The two voices sounded almost at the same time. Although the words were different, they meant the same thing. Both heard each other's words, and turned their heads and continued to say, "No, Master/Xiao Li, you go first." The voices overlapped again, but both looked at each other, and smiled unconsciously on their faces. Guangling laughed directly, feeling relieved. "Xiao Li, listen to your master, you choose first. The younger you are, the greater the benefits of taking immortal herbs. Your master is already old, and I am going to use immortal herbs to impact the peerless Douluo. It is too wasteful to take them now. Even if you accumulate soul power, it may take a few years, so there is no need to waste the best. With this time, you are enough to grow up." Guangling's tone was very serious, and he glanced at the 8-angled black ice grass by the pool while speaking. "This is the only fairy grass here that can amplify the ice attribute. With his strength and the other top-grade medicinal materials here, he can suppress the poison and successfully absorb it." Douluo even gave a plan in the booklet. But he knew very well that his apprentice also had ice attributes, and it was the kind that perfectly blended ice and fire. Coincidentally, there was another fairy grass called fiery apricot vegetable next to it. Although he did not memorize the contents of the booklet, he still remembered one thing. The 8-angled black ice grass and the fiery apricot vegetable, taken together, have the ability of ice and fire alchemy body, and can also be invulnerable to water and fire. He cannot destroy this great opportunity. He really wants the fairy grass, but he has more face. In Guangling's heart, this place was originally found by Xiao Li, so there is no reason for a master to rob his disciple. Han Li was moved by his master's words. He could see Guangling's desire for the 8-angled mysterious ice grass. He had secretly glanced at it many times before, but in the end he chose to let him pick it first. This decision was no different from giving up directly. But to be honest, Han Li didn't care about this 8-angled mysterious ice grass. He was really going to let Guangling take it. It's not that he looked down on the so-called ice and fire alchemy body, but he really didn't dare. Don't look at the good words in the records, but there is no record of anyone succeeding in the records. On the contrary, the single immortal grass written by Douluo combined with other medicinal materials to assist in absorption has been successfully absorbed by someone, and he also made some reasonable adjustments based on the medicinal materials records above and inferred the effect. Yes, Han Li knew that Tang San succeeded in the original novel, but he didn't dare to gamble, nor did he want to gamble. These two immortal herbs are different from other immortal herbs. After eating them, you have to jump into the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire to take a bath. He himself has extremely strong ice and fire attributes. He only needs to grow step by step to be immune to most ice and fire attribute attacks. How could he be willing to gamble on a double immunity of ice and fire that is not so effective for him, and try to have an illusory survival record? As for being immune to all poisons, there is still the Yuxiang Kiluo immortal product for self-defense. Han Li glanced at Guangling and said very seriously, "Master, you know me. I am timid and afraid of death. I will definitely not eat the 8-angled black ice grass and the fiery apricot vegetables and jump into the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Besides, I have extremely strong immunity to ice and fire attributes, and my physical strength is comparable to that of an ordinary soul master. Do you think I still need to strengthen my physique for the time being? So, listen to me, the 8-angled black ice grass belongs to you." When Guangling heard Han Li's words, he was also stunned for a moment, and then his expression suddenly became strange. He didn't expect his apprentice to use this reason to convince him, but thinking about his usual temperament, it would be better to say that this reason is quite reasonable, but he still thinks it is too wasteful. Seeing that Guangling seemed to be a little loose, Han Li struck while the iron was hot. "Also, teacher, don't forget that these two fairy grasses rely on this environment to grow here. Compared with the fairy grass, my martial soul should sense the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, which is my biggest gain." Guangling nodded subconsciously, and he agreed with this. Since he came here, his own spiritual sense reminded him not to approach there casually, and to a certain extent, danger also represents preciousness. "So, you should eat it even more. We can find this place, and it is inevitable that someone will come here in the future. Only if you are stronger, can you better protect this treasure land, right?" Han Li guided him unnoticeably. Guangling nodded unconsciously again, but this time, he reacted quickly and did not fall into his language trap, but looked at Han Li with a very complicated look. How come after these 3 words, he didn't have to choose, so he had to eat the star aniseed black ice grass today? Guangling didn't answer immediately, but frowned and stood there thinking. Seeing this, Han Li didn't say anything anymore, just quietly waiting for him to make a decision. On the side, Douluo, who had been left out for a long time, not only learned the functions of the 2 immortal herbs, but also listened to the conversation between the master and the apprentice in full, and his mood was very difficult to understand. He knew the function of the treasure, but it didn't belong to him now. And these 2 masters and apprentices were interesting. They both wanted the other to pick the only ice-attributed fairy grass, and even used excuses such as fear of death and old age. In Douluo's eyes, this was indeed an excuse. However, it was good, which showed that both of them valued feelings. As long as he behaved himself in the future, he would not be treated badly. Thinking of this, he unconsciously touched one of the 2 treasure bags on his waist, ready to gamble. "Well, you two, how about listening to me?" Douluo suddenly spoke, breaking the silence at the scene. Guangling and Han Li both looked at the most vulnerable poison Douluo at the scene, wanting to see what he wanted to say. Chapter 52. Seeing that both of them turned their eyes to him, Douluo smiled stiffly. "Actually, there is not only one ice-attributed plant here. I also collected a high-year ice-attributed medicinal material before. I was going to do research, but I don't know if it is the immortal grass you are talking about. Otherwise, can you two help me take a look?" As he spoke, a half-meter-long vine appeared in his hand. It was not specially treated, and the roots were still intact. There was still soil on it, and it was not long ago that it was dug out. The moment they saw the vine, Guangling and Han Li showed surprise on their faces, and shouted in unison, "Ice Frost Vine! So you know each other, that's easy. I said that as long as you are willing to save Yanyan, I will give you all my belongings, and this is also part of it. Here, take it. After saying that, Douluo threw it to Han Li, and Han Li carefully caught it and observed it carefully. From a distance, this vine is blue and white in color, but if you look closely, you will find that its roots and stems are translucent, and there are faint white light spots flashing inside, which looks like a galaxy. With its snowflake-shaped leaves, it looks more like a work of art than a plant. Only when he saw the top, Han Li frowned slightly, but then he thought of something and relaxed. Guangling keenly noticed the change in his expression and whispered, "Xiao Li, is there anything wrong?" Han Li raised his head, shook his head, and replied with a smile, "Nothing is wrong. It is indeed a fairy grass that perfectly matches the teacher's ice light attribute. Even the octagonal black ice grass is far less compatible with it. The only pity is that it is not fully mature yet. However, if the teacher is willing to wait for a few years, it will definitely be of great help." "How long will it take to mature?" Guangling asked impatiently. "With the environment here, it will not exceed 10 years at most." Han Li said affirmatively. "Only 10 years, I can still wait." Guangling smiled very happily, as if he saw the peerless Douluo waving at him. Han Li did not interrupt his master's excitement, but turned his head to look in the direction of Douluo. He bowed solemnly and said, "Thank you for the gift from Senior Douluo. I promise that I will completely dissolve the poison of your grandfather and grandson and eliminate all the hidden dangers. The previous idea of guarding is over, so you don't have to worry about it." This fairy grass, which did not appear in the original book, can be said to be irreplaceable in its help to the master, and it is worth Han Li's doing this. Seeing that Han Li's attitude is much better than before, and he even directly promised to cancel the previous conditions and he would treat him unconditionally, Douluo was happy at first. It seems that he made the right bet. Then he frowned, "This is not right, the effect is a bit too good." From what this kid said, he planned to settle the matter after the treatment, but he was still thinking about the secret of Han Li's second ring of the millennium. He is useless, but Douluo's talent is not good. It can be said that it is basically impossible to become a title. If he wants to go further in the future, this may be the key. If he didn't know, it would be fine. Now that he knows everything, it would be a loss to just watch the opportunity slip away from his eyes. I had lowered my psychological bottom line so low before, and even joined the spirit hall. Now I am free, but it is difficult to keep the secret. It is more painful to watch and not be able to enjoy it than to not know it. Senior. Han Li saw that after he made a promise, Douluo changed his face on the spot. He couldn't figure out his thoughts for a while, so he waited for a while before shouting. "Oh, you are done." Douluo answered absent-mindedly. "Yes, I am done. But although I promised you, I still have to ask you to wait for a while. After I finish dealing with things here, I can help you detoxify." Although Han Li felt that his reaction was a little wrong, he still said seriously. "Oh, yes, no, I can't just let it go." Douluo's reaction suddenly became fierce, causing Guangling to subconsciously draw the bow and aim the arrow at him, ready to destroy him humanely. Don't do it. I have no intention of doing it or going back on my word." Douluo spoke so fast. The moment Guangling aimed the arrow at him, the hairs on his body stood up. He obediently retracted his shaking arms and stood still without daring to react excessively. Then, he looked in the direction of Han Li, and a smile appeared on his stiff old face. "Don't get me wrong, what I mean is that this ice frost vine is the reward I promised you, and it should belong to you. I, Douluo, am also a title after all, and my words are as firm as my words. I promised to protect you, so I must not regret it, right?" "That's right." He scratched his eyebrows with his right hand and said irritably, "I am used to being free, and I am really not used to joining any force. Otherwise, let's make a discount? I am only responsible for protecting you and not joining the spirit hall. Do you think it's okay? Or, in this case, can you tell me about the second 1,000-year ring? I promise to only use it for my granddaughter and will not reveal it to others. What do you think?" Well, it turns out that this guy is thinking this. No wonder he reacted so strongly just now. He was thinking about the secret of the soul ring and wanted to benefit her granddaughter. He was afraid that the master and apprentice would abandon them after the treatment. Han Li looked at Guangling. The two exchanged glances. Guangling nodded gently and felt that it was acceptable. Anyway, it was just a weak title. If he was really taken back to the worship hall, he would still feel uncomfortable. Now, following Han Li directly is a great choice. Seeing that his master had no objection, Han Li nodded to Douluo. That's fine, but there's no need to mention followers. Senior is the top titled Douluo on the continent after all. Han Li is worthy of being followed by Senior. Senior only needs to protect me when I'm in danger. What do you think? Han Li picked out nice words and looked at Douluo. What about the soul ring? Douluo mentioned it again. That's easy. I will use it on your granddaughter when I treat her. After that, I will continue to help her improve. But please forgive me, Senior. This method is related to the secrets of the Spirit Hall. I dare not disclose it casually. Even if I agree to it, I can only do it this way. Do you think you can accept it? Han Li said with a little apology on his face. It doesn't matter. As long as the effect can be achieved, I have no intention of prying into the secrets of the Spirit Hall. Douluo waved his hand and nodded decisively. Thank you for your understanding. Han Li bowed again. Okay, don't bow. There are not so many rules here. Be casual. Douluo was in a good mood at this time. In this way, the problems between him and Douluo were solved. He felt relieved and looked at Han Li with more kindness. This kid is really good, much better than his master who can only threaten with a bow. He speaks nicely, does things in moderation, has the strength, the background, and looks very distinctive, but it's a pity that he is a little young, 7 years younger than Yan. Well, 7 years younger? No, just 7 years younger. It doesn't seem impossible, and he looks about the same age as Yan, so they can cultivate feelings first and wait until they are adults. If it really works out, with this kid's talent and background, Yan will get the advantage. Even if he is gone, the power behind this kid can protect her. Not bad, not bad. The more he thought about it, the more Douluo felt that it was feasible. He looked at Han Li with eager eyes, as if he was looking at his grandson-in-law. Looking at the wretched old man who kept smiling and nodding at Han Li, Guangling frowned and said coldly, You, Douluo, what do you want to do by looking at Xiao Li like that? Do you really think my arrows are useless? Douluo, who was threatened by Guangling this time, was not angry, but smiled and said, Hey, Guangling, don't be angry, I just want to ask, does your apprentice need a fiancé? Do you want to consider my granddaughter? Chapter 53. Ha! This time, not only Guangling, but also Han Li, who was looking for a suitable place to plant the ice mangfrost vine again, straightened up and turned his head to look over. I have to say that before, he did consider taking the marriage route and playing the emotional card, but who would have thought that Douluo was so unlucky that he was captured while he was still in a coma, and then he was easily manipulated, so naturally there was no need for such trouble. But this matter has been resolved, and Douluo is still planning to send his granddaughter away, which he did not expect. But then he realized that this little old man had taken a fancy to his potential and was preparing to bind him deeply, and he had a good plan. After all, in the original work, he was also prepared to do this after seeing Tang San's potential. However, Douluo already had a boyfriend at the time, and he wasn't interested in Tang San either, so he could only give up. Of course, Han Li does not reject this kind of behavior. After all, he has actively thought about taking this route, provided that he and Douluo are not so uncomfortable getting along. After all, although there are not many beauties in Soul Master, the beauties with the fame bonus in the original works are still more attractive to him, and he does not need to escape from the world of mortals. There was no reaction from Han Li, but the reaction from Guangling was quite big. You think so well, what? Do you, Douluo, still want to be my elder? Guangling stared at Douluo with an unkind tone. When Douluo saw that Guangling was not interested in anything else but speaking with seniority, his eyes rolled around and he thought of his words. Oh, judging from what you said, let's just discuss our own issues. Think about it, there are several descendants of titles in the mainland who are of the same generation as him. He wants to marry my granddaughter and have a close relationship, why don't you still? Are you worried that I won't protect him well in the future? Do you think this is true? Guangling was stunned for a moment by what he said, but a thought rose up in her heart. What Douluo said seemed to make some sense. Fortunately, he is an expert in sophistry and has been baptized by Han Li for more than a year. He realized Douluo's little thoughts halfway through. It was funny and not so disgusting at the same time. It was all for the sake of the children, okay? Understand. This little old man is much cuter than before. However, he still decisively refused, "This is Xiao Li's own business. I won't interfere blindly, as long as you can convince him." Seeing the joy on Douluo's face, he then changed his subject, "Although I don't object, as a master, it is still necessary to check for him. Come, let's come here and tell you the details of your granddaughter. Let me hear if she is worthy of my apprentice." Easy to say, easy to say. My granddaughter's name is Douluo. She is 14 years old. She has a martial spirit, a green phosphorus snake, a level 7 innate soul power, and a level 25 great soul master. Although she is not as good as this kid, she is still considered a genius. The most important thing is she has a gentle temperament and is beautiful, and of course, I am a titled grandfather. How about it? The conditions are not bad. Douluo looked proud and said to Guangling. Innate level 7 is a bit low, not as talented as Xiu'er, and he is 7 years older than Xiao Li. However, her strength is not bad at this age. In addition, she also has a titled grandfather, which is a bonus and can be included in the scope of the investigation. Well, you can ask more details. Afterwards, the two walked to the side and started chatting arm in arm, leaving the person involved aside. Seeing this scene, the corner of Han Li's mouth twitched. Let's not talk about Douluo. Master, what's the matter with you? Didn't you say you wouldn't interfere with my affairs? Why are we still chatting? Forget it, let them go and deal with the fairy grass issue first. Han Li shook his head and concentrated on transplanting and picking the mature treasures. With the plant illustration provided by Douluo, and Han Li having prepared all the tools mentioned above before coming, his own wristband can also store living things. Therefore, when the chat between the two people over there came to an end, they found that the two eyes of ice and fire had changed drastically. Han Li did not plow everything here like Tang San in the original work. He only picked some mature fairy grass and also left the roots, leaving all the rare treasures that could continue to grow. Here. Of course, he picked a lot of precious medicinal materials that were not in the realm of immortals, leaving only 1/3 here. It's just that he didn't just pick, many of them were transplanted, and he dug a lot of soil, so the ground looked like it had been gnawed by dogs, with pits and pits, which was very unsightly. Guangling walked over and looked at the place where the star anise ice grass originally grew. The frost vine had been transplanted to the side, and asked casually, "Is it done?" Han Li smiled and raised his left hand, indicating that everything was already inside. "Then we should kick him out first." Guangling said this to Han Li while using his soul power to cover up the movement. When speaking, he also used his eyes to signal Douluo behind him. Han Li pondered for a moment, then shook his head and rejected Guangling's proposal. He and Douluo had already reached a preliminary agreement just now, and Douluo also wanted to get closer, so there was no need to cover it up, otherwise it would only cause the newly established trust to be resented again. Of course, the most important reason is that Guangling is here and has enough strength to protect him from threats. In addition, he also has the Yuxiang Kiluo immortal with him. As long as Douluo is not allowed to directly inject the poison into his body, he has enough. The confidence guarantees life safety. In fact, since he entered the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, the ice and fire bow has been a little difficult to control, so even when he showed his strength just now, he only summoned it slightly and immediately put it into his body. Now, he is ready to let go of the control. The activeness of the martial soul is probably a good thing, so why not take this opportunity to show something more, give Douluo enough confidence, and let him completely fall to his side. Kill two birds with one stone, win-win, win twice is his plan. Seeing that he had made a decision, Guangling stopped persuading him, but silently summoned the martial soul again and stood aside. Douluo was still a little confused. Why did Guangling summon the martial soul again? Was he not satisfied with him? No, didn't they chat happily just now? Just when he hadn't figured out what was going on, he saw Han Li move. Han Li first bowed to him and Guangling respectively, and then said, "Master, Senior, next, I am going to summon the spirit. Please protect me. Just don't let others disturb me. Don't act rashly if I encounter any situation during this period, okay?" "Okay, Xiao Li, I won't let anyone disturb you." Guangling glanced at Douluo while speaking, indicating that he was also included in the anyone mentioned. Douluo rolled his eyes in annoyance, but did not argue. He also wanted to see what this kid was going to do. So, he nodded, and also possessed the spirit, and walked to a slightly farther place, but did not leave the valley. I will be responsible for dealing with the surrounding movements, and you will be responsible for protecting him. Seeing Douluo walk away tactfully, Guangling nodded to Han Li. Let's start. Han Li did not speak, took a deep breath, moved a little closer to the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and summoned the ice and fire bow. Perhaps because Han Li let go of control, the ice and fire bow just appeared and floated directly into the air, trembling violently. At the same time, as the ice and fire bow trembled, the ice and fire yin-yang eyes were no longer calm as before, and began to churn, causing the ground of the entire basin to shake. Guangling and Douluo both looked at the ice and fire bow in the air, and a look of horror flashed across their faces. What was going on? Then, in their doubtful eyes, Han Li closed his eyes. I don't know when the ice and fire bow reached above his head. Under the gaze of the two titles, the two slowly left the ground and floated to the center of the ice and fire yin-yang eyes. Chapter 54. What's going on here? Do you know? The moment Han Li floated up, Douluo shouted at Guangling. Shut up and watch the periphery. If anything happens to Xiao Li, I will kill you first. Guangling shouted with an irritated face. How could he know what was going on? But Han Li had told him not to interrupt him before, so he could only watch. At this time, new changes appeared in the sky above the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Just when Han Li and the ice and fire bow flew to the center of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, the ice and fire bow and the pool water returned to calm at the same time, as if they had reached a certain state of harmony. At this time, Han Li was floating 1 meter above the pool water, with his eyes closed, his head slightly tilted up, standing in the air, and the ice and fire bow was attached to his forehead. In the pool below, 2 lines that looked like energy and water flow surged up, one milky white and the other red, tied to the places where the bowstring should appear on both sides, bow tip, and then the 2 energies circulated around the bow body, and the ice-fire bow became brighter, and the remaining part of the energy turned into light red energy and injected into Han Li's forehead. Guangling's palms were full of sweat. If Han Li's expression was not very calm and there was no discomfort, and if Han Li had not told him not to interrupt him no matter what happened during the process, he would definitely take action at the first time. At this time, Douluo on the edge also saw this scene and was stunned. He was more familiar with the ice-fire yin-yang eyes than Guangling. After discovering this place, he had been trying to use the pool water inside, but no matter what method he used, it was difficult to take it out. Not to mention that Han Li was now using his martial soul to directly contact it. The most important thing was that the energy was still flowing into his forehead along the martial soul, and he was completely fine. This was simply a miracle in Douluo's eyes, but only at this time did he have the mood to take a closer look at Han Li's martial soul. He saw that the ice and fire bow, which was already very gorgeous when he first saw it, was even more shining under the baptism of 2 energies, and even had a certain suppression on his martial soul. How is this possible? Douluo was shocked. His martial soul and Han Li's martial soul were very different. One was a beast martial soul and the other was a weapon martial soul. They couldn't be related at all. Why would there be such a reaction? In fact, it was not only him, Guangling also felt something was wrong. As the ice and fire bow continued to flash, he also felt the feeling of his martial soul being suppressed. Before, although Han Li's ice and fire bow was of higher quality than his Guangling divine bow because of the perfect fusion of ice and fire, he would not have such a feeling at all as they were both top-level martial souls. But now, the sense of suppression from the upper martial soul is becoming more and more obvious. However, while Guangling felt uncomfortable, he was also very happy. This proved that Han Li was safe now. Their previous guess was correct. Han Li's martial soul was evolving and transforming to a higher level. So he endured the nausea and looked in the direction of Douluo, but saw that Douluo also looked unhappy. This expression was exactly the same as his, and it was obvious that his martial soul was suppressed. Your martial soul also feels suppressed? Guangling said in surprise. Yet, seeing Guangling looking over, Douluo simply took back his martial soul and felt a lot more comfortable instantly. Isn't this kid a weapon martial soul? Is he a twin martial soul? Or is it the top dragon martial soul? Otherwise, how could he suppress the green phosphorus snake king? Damn it, I didn't have this feeling when I met the old dragon of the Yu family. Douluo looked at Guangling irritably, hoping that he could answer one or two. No, I don't know either. Wait until he wakes up and ask him yourself. Guangling was also full of question marks. As they were talking, the situation changed again. The ice and fire bow trembled violently and made a huge humming sound, as if it was no longer satisfied with the current situation. Under the gaze of the two, the bow burst out with a huge suction force, and a large amount of liquid in the two pools was directly absorbed around Han Li, completely wrapping him up. Guangling and Douluo were attracted by the sudden change and hurried to look. Han Li was no longer standing and floating as before, but lying horizontally in the air. From here, only his body can be seen vaguely, and outside is a spherical object with a mixture of two colors. The two-color water flow on the surface continues to collide with each other, producing a lot of mist, and the water in the pool has also dropped a few centimeters visibly. Guangling, who was closer, felt that the bow in his hand trembled again, became heavier, and even the light of the bow was dimmed a little. Okay, put away your bow. Isn't it uncomfortable to hold on? Looking at the situation, I don't know how long this kid will take. This place is surrounded by poisonous miasma, and it's night time, so no one can come in. At some point, Douluo had come over from the periphery and stood beside Guangling, looking at the two-color sphere above the yin-yang eye of ice and fire with a look of admiration. Go back. Guangling turned around and pointed his bow at Douluo. I said you can do it. This kid is wrapped in the pool water. Do you think my attack can penetrate this ball? Don't think I didn't notice that you secretly shot an arrow into it before, but the arrow was directly melted. After the previous communication, Douluo was not so afraid of Guangling. Instead, he took out a chair from the storage space and handed it to Guangling. Guangling's face was uncertain. He turned his head to look in the direction of Han Li, and then looked at Douluo, who looked sincere. He snorted coldly, took back his martial spirit, took over the chair, but changed his direction before sitting down. He didn't look in the direction of the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire, but stared at Douluo. Douluo turned his head and looked at Guangling with speechless eyes, but didn't say anything. He didn't bother to pay attention to this dog-faced guy. This kid is his favorite grandson-in-law, how could he harm him? Besides, the poison in their grandfather and grandson has not been solved yet, and they still have to rely on this kid. Guangling is really worried and confused, and even forgot the most important things. Originally, I wanted to continue chatting with him, but looking at the current situation, forget it, so as to avoid this killer embryo thinking that he has bad intentions and kill him directly, which is not worth it. So, just like this, the two titles, one staring at Han Li in the pool, and the other staring at each other, and occasionally looking at the situation in the pool, sat until dawn. Seeing that the sun had already risen, Douluo glanced at Han Li, who was still motionless, turned his head to look at Guangling, and asked, "It's been a night, I'm hungry, I need to eat, do you want to eat?" "Eat yours, I warn you, don't try to play any tricks." Guangling also stood up, threw the chair over, and signaled him to roll away. Douluo caught the chair and was about to speak, but heard the sound of water from the pool, and hurriedly looked back. Guangling also slightly tilted his head to look in the direction of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and saw that Han Li had resumed his original standing state, and the water ball outside the body began to continuously fall back into the pool, and the sound came from there. Suddenly, Han Li's eyes opened sharply, and the ice-fire bow on his forehead also made a buzzing sound, which directly broke the line connecting the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and emitted a dazzling light. When Guangling and Douluo turned their heads and closed their eyes to avoid the strong light, the water ball completely dispersed and hit the pool fiercely, making a loud noise. After a long time, the dazzling light and the sound of water finally disappeared. Guangling and Douluo hurriedly dispelled the fog in front of them and looked in the direction of Han Li, but saw Han Li standing on the water surface, and the ice and fire bow fell back into his hand. "Master, Senior, thank you for your hard work." Han Li excitedly waved his left hand at the two of them, and then strode out of the pool as if walking on flat ground and came to the two of them. Chapter 56. You just walked out like this. The first person to speak was Douluo. He clicked his tongue twice and looked at Han Li, who didn't even have any damage to his clothes, as if looking at a monster. "Oh, you said this, I have gained a lot of benefits this time, so it is not surprising that I can do this." "Are you right, Master?" Han Li smiled and turned to look at Guangling aside. However, he found that Guangling did not speak, but stared at the ice and fire bow held in his right hand with shining eyes. No, maybe it can no longer be called an ice and fire bow. At this time, the ice and fire bow has completely changed its appearance. The previous red and blue ice and fire bow, now the blue has faded, and has turned into the same milky white as the ice and fire eyes of the extremely cold pool water. The red color has also become more vivid, turning into the same vermilion. The milky white and vermilion are mixed together, and it looks like it was a little less gorgeous than before, but it was inexplicably more ferocious. The most peculiar thing is that the place from the bow arm to the bow handle has changed from a slightly sharp side edge to two dragon bodies, one white and one red. The position of the bow handle is sandwiched by two exquisite dragon heads. The position of the tip has become the dragon's tail. The position of the bowstring that used to require soul power to be revealed is now independently connected by a light red energy line, and finally it is no longer the incomplete form before. As we expected, my martial spirit has evolved. Seeing that his master was very concerned, Han Li handed over the bow in his right hand. Anyway, his bow didn't feel like others were touching his body, so it didn't hurt to show it to his master. Guangling saw his move, swallowed, wiped his hands on the robe unconsciously, and prepared to take it with both hands. Unexpectedly, something surprising happened. Just when Guangling's hands were about to touch the bow, the new ice and fire bow let out a fierce roar, burst out a burst of energy, and bounced Guangling away, even to the side. Douluo was not spared and was directly ejected. Fortunately, both of them were banned, so their reaction was not too slow. They mobilized their soul power in time to protect their bodies and were not injured. However, even so, the two of them looked a little embarrassed, and their hair was scattered by the shock. "Master, Senior, are you okay?" Han Li was also startled by the sudden burst of the ice and fire bow, and shouted quickly. Fortunately, the energy only burst out in the shape of an arc and did not affect him. "This is..." The two titles looked at each other, and without bothering to adjust their posture, they gathered around Han Li again and carefully looked at the ice and fire bow in his hand, but this time no one tried to touch it. At this time, Han Li also lowered his head and looked at the ice and fire bow in his hand. He saw the red and white colors flowing on the bow, and the two dragons on it seemed to be alive, exuding a bit of majesty. After a while, Guangling raised his head and said uncertainly, "Perhaps after evolution, your bow has become spiritual and you don't want others to touch it." Douluo also interjected, "It is possible, and I can confirm that your martial spirit also has a very high level of dragon power. Even the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex cannot compare with this aura." When Guangling heard Douluo's words, her eyes brightened and she looked at Han Li. "It's very possible, maybe it's the same situation as your demon subduing master uncle and Qianjun master uncle. Maybe, I don't know, I'd better study it later." Han Li smiled and did not answer the question directly. "My ice and fire blade has also been strengthened." In Douluo's confused expression, the ice and fire bow in Han Li's hand decomposed into an ice and fire blade and fell into his hands. As expected, the ice and fire blade has also undergone tremendous changes, and now it may be called the Dragon Blade. "Didn't you say that he is not a twin martial soul?" Douluo turned to look at Guangling beside him, his face full of indignation. "How come this master doesn't understand his apprentice at all? I can't even tell if they are twin martial spirits." Guangling glanced at Douluo with contempt, folded her hands in front of her chest, and looked like she was too lazy to pay attention to him. Han Li smiled and explained, "Senior, master did not lie to you. I am indeed not a twin martial soul, but my martial soul has two forms." As he spoke, he raised his hand slightly and showed Douluo a black and purple soul ring hanging on it, which had turned into a pendant. The first black soul ring was still vaguely plated with a layer of light red light. "Hey, Xiao Li, your first soul ring." Guangling also noticed this, widened his eyes and said in surprise. "Well, maybe it's because this evolution suits my martial soul so well. The first soul ring has also evolved accordingly. At present, it is about 15,000 years, but it will continue to increase as my strength increases. Increasing the age is regarded as my natal soul ring? The original increase has now reached 100%. Han Li could not hide the joy on his face. Then, he said with some annoyance, "However, the exclusivity of the elements seems to have become more obvious, completely rejecting any element other than the elements of ice and fire. Not only that, the soul power in my body has been affected and turned into a pale red. I'm afraid it will be a luxury to convey soul power to others in the future." Han Li put away his martial spirit and condensed a ball of pale pink soul power in his hand. "There's something wrong with the degree of solidification of your soul power and the concentration of elements." Guangling, who often gave Han Li tricks and competed with him, discovered at a glance that his soul power was abnormal. After thinking about it, a ball of soul power also appeared in his hand, slowly approaching the light red soul power in Han Li's hand. Then, something unexpected happened to Guangling. After being wrapped by his soul power, the light red soul power belonging to Han Li actually began to slowly erode his soul power. Although the speed was very slow, it did show this trend. You know, although this was a ball of soul power released by Guangling casually, the gap between the Great Soul Master and the Title Master is not small, not to mention that Guangling is now level 97. The elemental power in Han Li's soul power can erode his soul power, although only a little bit, it is also amazing. Guangling, who became interested, pulled Han Li to test it, and finally gave a rough range. Han Li's soul power is almost comparable to the Soul King, and in terms of pure elemental power, even he, a super Douluo, is a little worse in the strength of the ice element, which made him envious for a while. Douluo, who was standing aside, was like a child who had never seen the world. His cognition was constantly refreshed. He was somewhat skeptical about life. He suddenly felt that he had lived for nothing for decades. When he was young, he also called himself a genius, but it was not until now that he realized that the gap between geniuses might be greater than that between people and dogs. Compared with the boy in front of him, he was a shitty genius. So, the master and apprentice, who were studying the new changes with great interest, heard a crisp sound from the side. They turned their heads and found that there was a red handprint on Douluo's face, and his hand had not been put down. Obviously, for some reason, this poisoned Douluo slapped himself. Seeing the master and apprentice looking at him, Douluo smiled awkwardly, but did not speak, but came over and joined their discussion. This potential stock in the future, Douluo must seize it. Face is not important. He will definitely take this grandson-in-law. From today on, he, Douluo, is Han Li's dog. If anyone threatens him, he will go up and kill the whole family of that person. He doesn't believe that Han Li will not be moved. Douluo relies on his strength to make up for Yan Yan's age and talent, until Han Li changes his mouth to call him grandpa. Hey, first being a grandson and then a grandfather, he, Douluo, is the winner who laughs last. Thinking of this, Douluo couldn't help laughing again, which made the master and apprentice feel a chill. Chapter 57. Seeing the old man approaching, the master and the apprentice didn't care. Some things would be exposed as long as Han Li used them. Moreover, this was the reserved number one thug, and basic respect should be given, not to mention that this person was the kind who was going to pay for it. With the help of the two titles, Han Li quickly tested the strength of his martial soul after evolution. In less than an hour, the basic test was completed, and the three of them had passed the excitement and finally felt the warning from their stomachs to eat. So, under the gaze of Douluo, Han Li decisively took out the tables, chairs, benches, pots and pans, and water base that had been prepared long ago from his wristband, plus fresh high-quality ingredients. The three of them moved a little away from the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire and set up a hot pot. The fresh air in the early morning was soon mixed with a very tempting fragrance, not to mention that Han Li also harvested some medicinal herbs that could be used as spices, mixed with the base, making the fragrance more intense. Looking at the meat slices that had changed color in the pot, Guangling picked up a piece and put it into his mouth. After swallowing it, he looked at Han Li. Do you want to rename your martial soul? It's not appropriate to call your evolved martial soul Ice Fire Bow and Ice Fire Blade. Change it, it must be changed. The martial souls of the strong have no bad names. Your Ice Fire Bow and Ice Fire Blade are a bit too ordinary. To be honest, even your previous martial souls are not worthy of this name. Douluo swallowed a piece of green vegetables and interrupted strongly, looking like an experienced person. Guangling also nodded in agreement. It's not that he had never thought about asking Han Li to change the name of his martial soul, but Han Li didn't care. He always said that it was enough to get the meaning. This time the martial soul has undergone such a big change, it has to be changed. Han Li felt the spicy feeling in his mouth, took a sip of juice, thought for a while and then answered, then call it Ice Fire Dragon Bow and Ice Fire Dragon Blade, it's appropriate. Guangling and Douluo looked at each other and read similar discomfort from each other's eyes, but at least it was better than before, so they nodded and accepted it with their noses pinched. After all, they couldn't think of any better names for a while, and the person didn't care. Then what level is your current martial soul strength? Has it reached the height we expected before? Guangling asked without thinking. No, half of it. When I evolved my martial soul this time, I felt that there was still room for improvement. But maybe my level is too low and I can't bear it, and my martial soul has temporarily reached saturation. I was afraid of any accidents, so I gave up. Let's talk about it when I reach Soul King or Soul Saint. It's enough now. Han Li understood what the master meant and answered vaguely. Angel spirits are god-level spirits, which is also a secret of the spirit hall. Even if Douluo has surrendered, he cannot tell it now. After all, he is just a personal guard and has not really joined the spirit hall. Seeing the master and apprentice playing dumb in front of him, Douluo glared at them angrily, but he also realized that there were some things he couldn't know yet, so he took a chopstick of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. By the way, master, there is one more thing I forgot to say. I am level 30 and I have to consider new spirit rings. Han Li raised his head and said something casually, then lowered his head and ate the half fish in his hand that was full of fragrance. Guangling and Douluo froze, and the chopsticks that were ready to pick up the food stopped in mid-air. They turned their heads and looked at Han Li who was eating, as if they were looking at a monster. After a while, the two put down their chopsticks. It was nothing else. After listening to Han Li's words, they seemed to have no appetite suddenly. They were so hard when they practiced back then, but when it came to this kid, it took them a nap. Not only did his martial soul evolve, but his soul power also soared by 7 levels overnight. He felt so sad. Han Li didn't wait for a long time to get a reply. He looked up and saw that the two of them were just staring at him straight, not saying anything, with a creepy look in their eyes. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Don't you have any corresponding soul beasts to recommend? Han Li frowned, feeling a little embarrassed. He had read a lot of information before, but he really didn't select the soul beast he liked, and he was also preparing to learn from his master. The two looked at each other, sighed at the same time, and picked up the chopsticks again. Let's eat something. There's no need to be hard on your stomach. Han Li finally reacted after seeing the two's actions. He looked at them with a smile. Master, Senior, there is no need to do this. Don't you know some information about the fairy grass? Think about it, the fairy grass is so magical. The ice and fire yin-yang eyes that can breed them are naturally stronger, right? Besides, this is not without cost. Han Li saw that the two's eyes were attracted by him, and paused before saying, perhaps because the energy in the ice and fire yin-yang eyes is too strong, I still absorbed it directly through the martial soul. Those fairy grasses are probably mostly ineffective. Oh, I guess only the autumn water dew can still be used, but that thing increases mental power. My soul power should not skyrocket in the short term. Just think of it as me absorbing the fairy grass in advance, the same. Besides, with the current soul power quality, I'm afraid my cultivation speed will be slowed down in the future. Han Li did not say that his ice and fire were suspected to be extreme attributes. At this time, there was no corresponding concept, and the boundary of the extreme attribute was also extremely vague. He was really unsure. After hearing his explanation, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. It's not that they are not happy for him, but they are under great pressure because their juniors are so fierce. Especially Douluo, he always feels that if things continue like this, he probably won't be able to beat this kid in less than 10 years. Seeing that the two of them retaliated by picking up everything in the pot, Han Li had to take out some more ingredients and put them in. He was not full yet. During the waiting period, the two titles briefly united their front and strongly asked him to finish the matter at once, so as to avoid saying something that they could not accept later. Han Li thought about it and it seemed that there were not many things that he had not explained, so he simply stood up. When his soul power was running, he saw a layer of illusory dragon scales on his body, wrapping his whole body inside, and the tentacles on his head and the eagle eyes on the right also appeared. Like the martial soul, the tentacles and eyes have also changed a lot. The tentacles are much shorter than before. If it weren't for the red and white color that made it stand out among the black hair, it would be almost the same length as the hair. The previous hawk eyes did not change much compared to the tentacles, except that the original amber color was also replaced by light red. When activated, there was a light red light like mist, floating behind the head, which looked very handsome. Guangling glanced at Han Li in his new form and said directly, "Come on, punch me with all your strength." Han Li was also unambiguous. The moment Guangling's voice fell, he decisively punched him. A dull dong sounded, and Guangling caught his fist. He tried to increase the strength in his hand and test the defense of the illusory dragon scales on his body. Until Han Li couldn't hold on and showed a painful look, he let go and nodded. Master, how is it? Han Li asked impatiently. He really wanted to know the current level of his physical strength and defense. Very strong, your physical strength is a little stronger than I expected. In terms of strength, power, and defense alone, it has caught up with the level of your Golden Crocodile Master when he was level 50 in your records. Compared with other regular Soul Emperors of level 60 Beast Martial Spirits, it is also about the same. Guangling looked at the disciple in front of him with great satisfaction. What do you mean by not bad? He is only level 30. He is a complete monster. Douluo muttered on the side. What monster? Speak properly. This is a genius, understand. Guangling is indeed a dog. His face changes at any time. He was united with the front a minute ago, but now he is dissatisfied with Douluo's statement. Han Li also nodded in agreement. He is a human being, and he doesn't want to be a monster. Can that be a good adjective? Who would be happy to be called a monster? Douluo saw that Guangling was angry and immediately shut up. Seeing Han Li nodding in agreement, he secretly thought that monsters were not good words, and he just said something without thinking. Okay, genius is genius, no problem, he will beat up any monster he sees in the future, and he will get angry with anyone who says it is a monster in the future. Chapter 58. Seeing Douluo shut his mouth honestly, a smile appeared on Guangling's face again. This face-changing stunt made Douluo curse in his heart, and thought to himself, let you be happy first. When Yan Yan and this kid get married, even if you are stronger than me and older than me, in terms of seniority, I will also be your uncle. Generation. Han Li secretly noticed the expressions of the two people and couldn't help but curl his lips. The way these two got along was quite interesting. Maybe it was because Han Li's external soul bone had changed a lot, and it looked more like the change caused by the activation of the head soul bone, which made Douluo, who was looking at him, misjudge. After looking at him for a long time, he still tolerated it. He couldn't help but ask, what kind of soul beast skull is this? It's really strange. Why have I never seen it before? Hearing his words, Guangling raised the corners of his mouth slightly and gave him a disdainful look. Sure enough, this wild-titled Douluo was just ignorant and didn't even know about the external soul bone. Note, Douluo is aware of the misjudgment, and it is slightly exaggerated here. Seeing that Douluo was about to turn his head to look at Guangling, another verbal spat was about to begin. Han Li quickly spoke to attract his attention, Senior, this is not the head soul bone, but two external soul bones. It didn't look like this originally. It's just that this time the martial soul evolved and they were upgraded together. It has just reached 15,000 years. Douluo took a breath when he heard this and looked curiously at the tentacles on Han Li's head and his right eye. He was full of envy and didn't know what to say. In other words, Tu Yuan, just 15,000 years ago, he was so sour. After a while, he turned to look at Guangling. Your Wuhan palace is really rich and powerful. These are two external soul bones. You are really willing to be a master. However, Han Li's talent is worth it. When Guangling heard his praise, she felt secretly happy, but she still pretended to be calm and said, don't misunderstand me. Although Wuhan palace does not lack resources, and I, the master, love him very much, there is no need for them either. These two external soul bones were accidentally obtained by Xiao Li when he obtained the soul ring. Douluo was stunned when he heard Guangling's words. This answer was something he had not expected. Then he looked at the proud Guangling with a strange expression. Since it was not provided by Wuhan Palace and you, then you are just pretending. I don't know, I thought it was the soul bone you exploded. However, considering Guangling's current temperament, he was not stupid enough to say it directly. Suddenly, he thought of something, his eyes widened, and he looked at Han Li, you were only at level 23 before. So, you got an external soul bone each time you obtained the soul ring in the first 2 times. Han Li nodded calmly, acknowledging it. You're so lucky, kid. I've lived all my life, and I only saw the so-called external soul bones on you today, and I saw 2 of them at once. Douluo circled Han Li twice. After observing for a while, he reluctantly withdrew his gaze. Want it? I know where there is more. As long as you go to the Star Forest and kill all the man-faced demon spiders that are less than 3,000 years old, you might be able to find a piece. Han Li looked at him and joked in his mind, but he didn't say it out loud. If he really wanted to say it out like this, he would really be regarded as a monster. Regarding the 8 spider spears, he was prepared to cut off the beard, but it was not cost-effective to sacrifice a soul ring for this. He was prepared to leave it to his own team. And to be honest, he doesn't like spider legs and poison too much. Although he is obsessed with being a 6th form man, he hopes to crush everyone with a gorgeous appearance when he comes out. As for poison, his martial spirit now has its own fire poison and ice poison. As for the spider legs, it is acceptable to put them on a beautiful girl. On his back, they are left for wings, whether they are real wings or fake ones. Wing. He looked at Douluo calmly. The 8 spider spears were originally used in his plan to win over Douluo. Now the plan has gone awry, but he wants to get along with Douluo in the future, so it is not impossible to give her as a gift. After all, the attached soul bone has to grow with its master, and if it were given to a titled Douluo, its growth potential would be too low. This is why he did not invite his master to obtain the 8 spider spears in the Stardew forest. Okay, let's ignore him for now and talk about the specific changes. Guangling grabbed Douluo, who was dangling in front of his eyes, and looked at Han Li. The abilities have not changed much. They are basically increased on the original basis. The tentacles are still bound to the first soul skill. In addition to the original function being greatly improved, the affinity is further improved to control, which is 100%. The control and soul power are not bad, but the consumption of mental power has increased a lot. Also, the perception of temperature is more acute, which makes it easier to detect disguised enemies. Of course, when the mental power is released through the tentacles to attack, the increase is 2.5 times, and different elements can be selectively added. Power, making others furious or slow thinking. As for Hawkeye, on the premise of a significant increase in basic abilities, it has also gained similar abilities. However, unlike the temperature feedback of the tentacles, its ability is more of a perspective function. It can see through the enemy's soul power route, but it is quite expensive. Soul power. According to my rough estimate, I can't even activate it for more than 3 minutes before the soul power is exhausted. Eagle Eye's original fragility has been slightly modified. You can choose to ignite or freeze the effect while marking it. It will also have the effect of the healing soul skill halved during the time the mark exists. After marking, the next attack will cause the damage has been further increased to 50%. After Han Li finished speaking, regardless of the two people's reactions, he took all the attached soul bones back into his body, sat back on his seat, and ate the cooked food. For a long time, the two sat down silently, without speaking, and ate in silence. It wasn't until they had consumed nearly 2 days of food inventory that the three of them stopped using their chopsticks and leaned back on their chairs with satisfaction. Guangling and Douluo, with the buffer of time, finally accepted Han Li's abnormality. A Soul King who has just reached level 30, his physical strength and defense are comparable to those of a regular level 60 Soul Emperor, maybe slightly worse. His soul power concentration and destructive power are equivalent to those of a level 50 Soul King, and his mental power is higher than before. The words also revealed a little bit. Under normal circumstances, Han Li's mental power is not much different from that of a normal Soul King, but with the addition of his soul bones and elements, it can even hurt the Soul Saint. Of course, this will also cause his mental power to be temporarily exhausted, which is very dangerous. And only has the power of one blow. Taken together, regardless of the continuous output ability and short-term burst, there is no problem at all in treating Han Li as the Soul Emperor, and he is even a relatively strong one. The key is that he is not yet 8 years old. By the way, Xiao Li, after your mental power and elemental control have been improved this time, has your ability to control arrows strengthened? Guangling suddenly remembered something. When Han Li heard his master's question, he was stunned for a moment before replying, "It has indeed improved. I can now fully control elemental arrows." Then, he scratched his head in embarrassment and continued, "But, Master, have you forgotten that my soul power itself has strong corrosive properties now, even if I can completely control it? But when the arrow breaks at the moment when the body is opened, if those above the Soul King can still resist, those below the Soul King will still inevitably cause damage to them, they are too weak. So, you still can't compare?" Guangling asked with a headache. "Oh, that's not the case. I can control arrows to explode in advance. Even if I only use the impact generated by energy, most soul sects should not be my opponents. Well, even if I stand on the spot and throw fireballs and ice picks, I should be able to weaken win." After thinking for a while, Han Li gave a rather conservative estimate. Douluo's mouth twitched when he heard this, but he had no way to refute. He also participated in the previous test. Han Li did have the strength to say this. That's good. When the opportunity is right, you can help me beat up a few people. The corner of Guangling's mouth curled up slightly, remembering his plan to accept Han Li as his disciple. At that time, Bibi Dong used an excuse to go to the worship hall to cause trouble. The debt still had to be recovered. If the Pope is not suitable for the time being, then he can find it from her disciples. I hope she can withstand Han Li's firepower. Yes, Master. Han Li helplessly replied that he knew exactly what Guangling was thinking. Ever since he obtained the first soul ring, Guangling had always been concerned about this issue, and now he finally let him wait. I hope it won't cause too much trouble by then. He has to make some preparations in advance. Golden generation? For the sake of Master, I can only suffer for you, Han Li thought silently in his heart. Chapter 59. Hey, how much hatred do you have against that person? Let Han Li bully a soul master below the Soul King. Although Douluo didn't know the specific inside story, he could tell from the conversation and expressions between the two that Guangling was definitely planning to let Han Li bully others, and he couldn't help but feel sad for Han Li's opponent. Why do you want to know? Guangling turned around and looked at Douluo with a half smile. No, I don't want to. Douluo answered decisively. In his opinion, Guangling's heart was dark and he didn't want to get involved. Seeing that the two were about to continue bickering, Han Li quickly interrupted. Master, Senior, now is not the time to discuss this. Now that my matter has basically been settled, it is your turn now. After hearing Han Li's words, the two of them closed their mouths at the same time and looked at him with burning eyes, which made Han Li take 2 steps back in discomfort before stopping. Who comes first? Han Li looked at the 2 elderly people and asked tentatively. Me first. ×2. The 2 voices sounded almost at the same time, shaking Han Li's eardrums as if they were wailing. Okay, stop, listen to me first. Han Li stretched out his hands to stand between the 2 of them. He didn't want to hear the 2 of them arguing over this trivial matter anymore. Seeing the 2 people quietly sitting back down, Han Li was sorting out his thoughts in his mind and said, let me talk about Master first. You have said before that your enlightenment has reached the 98th level, all you need is the accumulation of soul power. No problem. Guangling glanced at Douluo, who was a little shocked when he heard the news. He crossed his arms and nodded proudly, which was considered affirmative. That's easy, and it's just right. After my martial soul evolves, I have absolute control over ice attribute elements. You don't have to take those auxiliary drugs by then, as long as you let go of the soul power in your martial soul on me with limited protection, I should be able to directly suppress the ice attribute poison in the octagonal black ice grass. Although my soul power is also corrosive, it is nothing to you. The recovery effect that comes with practicing is just that. Can remain unaffected. I will release it after you have completely absorbed it. By then, the corresponding poison should not be able to cause harm to you, and you can also take this opportunity to understand the ice attribute, and maybe you can use it for your own use. Although Han Li always used words like should and maybe, there was no doubt that Guangling and Douluo could hear it from his tone. This was almost a definite answer. When Guangling heard Han Li's words, she nodded without hesitation and directly agreed to Han Li's plan. Han Li didn't say anything else. There was enough trust between him and his master that some taboo matters between these soul masters were not a problem for the 2 of them. Then, he turned his head in the direction of Douluo. Senior, although your problem can be solved, it will definitely be more difficult than Master. You should have expected it, right? Douluo nodded heavily, answering his question. Okay, Senior, I will give you 2 options for your question, and it's up to you to decide. After that, Han Li didn't wait for Douluo's answer, and just spoke on his own. Your problem is actually mainly about the poison of your own martial spirit. With all due respect, after briefly understanding your martial spirit and combat methods, I have to say that I think you are on the wrong path. No, it should be said that, you choose the path is good, even better than the Jade Phosphorus Snake Soul Masters of the past, but you have just ignored a very important point, that is, having a highly poisonous snake spirit does not necessarily have the same excellent poison resistance. It is the root of all tragedies. Douluo's lips moved, and he instinctively wanted to retort, but thinking of his own situation, he fell silent again. Han Li glanced at him and continued, Perhaps you are aware of this without my reminding you, but not so clearly, but I think you should have taken certain measures, right? You are right. After Yanyan's father passed away, I started to adjust her soul skills. Although her first 2 soul skills are named after poison, they are better said to be direction-changing amplification skills. The poison of her own martial spirit will not affect her. The poison in her body is more due to the innate influence. But even so, as the level continues to increase, the toxicity of the martial spirit itself plus the innate toxicity it will have a big impact on her, Douluo said after being silent for a moment. Note, Douluo's first soul skill, biphosphorus red poison, is a kind of stimulating poison that can stimulate the human body's nerves, and the attack power and speed will increase by 20%. The second soul skill, biphosphorus blue poison, is a paralyzing poison can eliminate pain and increase teammates' defense by 30%. Very good. Now that you have understood this well, it will be easier to talk about it next. Han Li took a few steps forward and took out the Yuxiang Kiluo immortal product transplanted into the flower pot from his wristband. Douluo didn't understand what he meant. Didn't he say that this flower could only suppress poison but not detoxify it? In Douluo's puzzled eyes, Han Li said, the first way is to use my martial soul to link the ice and fire ice to wash your body. Not to mention 90% of the poison can still be removed. And then force the remaining poison in your body into your soul bone, and then swallow this fragrance Kiluo immortal in a special way, so that your body can gain resistance to poison. There are some secondary settings for Yuxiang Kiluo's ion pin here, but they will not be used, purely for plot service. If you do this, even if you produce poison again in the future, your body will be able to withstand it, and your subsequent cultivation will be smooth. Of course, the price is that before you recover the accumulated toxins for so many years, you will become very weak, and you may not even be able to defeat the stronger soul Douluo. As for the weak period, it depends on how fast your toxins recover. Douluo's heart was pounding, but looking at Han Li's calm expression, he resisted the urge to say I want it and asked in a hoarse voice, what about the second option? The second option is, have you considered changing a martial soul? Han Li suddenly asked. Change a martial soul? ×2. This time, not only Douluo, but even Guangling couldn't help asking. Oh, that's not appropriate. It should be the evolution of the martial soul. As far as I know, your previous martial soul was only the green phosphorus snake, and the subsequent martial soul evolved into the green phosphorus snake king, right? So, you should be familiar with the evolution of martial souls. Han Li smiled mysteriously. Douluo saw his smile and thought he had learned it from the intelligence of the spirit hall. He couldn't help cursing in his heart, damn Huoguan, why did you record my information in such detail? Although he didn't care that others knew that his spirit was evolved after birth, in the cognition of most spirit masters, his spirit was originally the green phosphorus snake king. Only Huoguan, who often sparred with him, knew so well. The various information from Han Li made Douluo feel like he was naked in front of others, without any secrets, which made him very unhappy. Yes, it's true as you said, my spirit has evolved once. Douluo said very openly. You know the benefits of the spirit evolution, and it is because of this that you can become a title in one fell swoop. So, do you mind taking another gamble? Perhaps, after you succeed, you can also let your granddaughter follow this path and get rid of the poisonous entanglement from the spirit. Not only that, the quality of the spirit may also be improved again. Han Li's voice was not loud, but it seemed to have some kind of magic in Douluo's ears, making him want to agree. Chapter 60. Douluo took a deep breath and looked at Han Li who was holding the fragrant fairy product. He had suffered several losses in the past 2 days, all because of his impulse. At this time, with the huge temptation in front of him, he calmed down instead. In particular, he did not forget that Guangling was ready to kill him when he just heard the word fairy grass. Han Li's generosity at this time made him feel a little uneasy. Han Li, to be honest, the 2 solutions you gave are too good, so good that I dare not choose them at all. Especially the second one, you seem to want me to choose it, which should be far beyond the treatment plan you promised me, right? Indeed. Han Li replied with a smile. Then you should tell me clearly why you want to do this. If you don't tell me clearly, I really dare not choose. Douluo said with a wry smile. To be honest, he thought he was not worth the price, and even the first one was incredible to him, but Han Li gave him 2 choices. No, this scared him. Han Li shook his head in distress. He still misjudged the impact of the spirit evolution on the natives of Douluo continent, and silently remembered this low-level mistake in his heart, and he would not make the same mistake again in the future. After reorganizing his thoughts, Han Li looked at Douluo in front of him. Senior, you are actually a little overthinking. To be honest, I tend to choose the second one, more because it is useful to me. As he spoke, Han Li pointed to the Yuxiang Kiluo Xian pin in his hand. As for the evolution of martial soul, considering the quality of the herbs here, it is not difficult. Do you understand what I mean? Also, I don't like to owe others. Since you have taken out the fairy herbs that are very important to master, I will definitely go all out. Otherwise, I just need to tell you to force the poison into the soul bone to treat the symptoms. Besides, since you have chosen to be my guard in the future, you are my own. I have said that I have always been generous to my own people. Although I cannot fully trust you now, I think it is worth it to take the opportunity of 2 martial soul evolutions in exchange for your favor. That's probably it. The initial reason was just because I needed the Yuxiang Kiluo fairy product. The subsequent decision was actually to win you over. Do you understand? Han Li spread his hands to indicate that he had finished speaking. Douluo was a little dazed when he heard it, so his worry was actually that his vision was too low? No, he shook his head quickly and denied his thoughts. The evolution of martial soul is a big deal anywhere. If there is such an opportunity, many high-level soul masters are willing to exchange their lives for it, so the reward given by Han Li is really precious. He came back to his senses, looked at the smiling Han Li again, nodded, and bowed solemnly. Then follow your method, I choose the second one. Okay, then I will adjust your body for you first. Your body is really too bad. It has almost been eroded by the poison. It is better to recover your vitality before trying it. It is better to start again. Han Li took back the Yuxiang Kiluo Xian pin, thought about it, and took out the 9th grade purple Ganoderma first. After thinking about it, he put it back, took out a 9th grade dragon Ganoderma with a little water mist, and handed it over. This is the 9th grade dragon Ganoderma, water attribute, growing next to the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. It is suspected that the 9th grade purple Ganoderma is affected by the breath of the water dragon king in the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and has mutated, containing a certain dragon breath. But I don't know whether it is because of mutation or other reasons. In short, it is stuck under the fairy grass. Similarly, it has a twin brother, the 9th grade dragon Ganoderma, fire attribute, is in the same situation. Han Li took out this rare treasure after consideration. In terms of effect, it is not inferior to the fairy grass for dragon and snake spirits. It can be regarded as the best among quasi-fairy grasses, which is enough for Douluo. Take the leaves first. In the process of conditioning the body, use its ability to suppress the toxins as much as possible. After that, I will prepare some medicine for you. After 7 days, we will start again. Han Li did not mean to introduce the fairy grass. Okay. Douluo took the 9th grade dragon Ganoderma in his hand and took a closer look. Although he still didn't recognize it, he knew it was a good thing by looking at the aura on it. Then he didn't say much, found a place to sit down, stuffed 2 pieces of dragon Ganoderma leaves into his mouth, and started practicing. Seeing Douluo go to one side, Guangling came over, knowing that Han Li was going to let him come first. Xiao Li, can my martial soul also evolve? Guangling asked with some expectation. Master, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? Han Li looked at Guangling and blinked. Forget it, you don't need to say anything, just start. Guangling waved his hand, knowing the answer, but he was just asking, and didn't mean to force it. Evolution is difficult, but it's no problem to be stronger. Han Li saw that his master was ready, and then took out the 8-angled black ice grass and handed it to Guangling. Guangling looked at the 8-angled black ice grass that was constantly eroding his soul power even in his hand, and turned to look at his apprentice. Eat it directly. No, just contact with your martial soul, leave it to me next. Han Li's expression became more serious. Guangling nodded, said nothing, and immediately sat down cross-legged, summoned his martial soul, put the 2 together, and closed his eyes. Han Li saw that the 2 had already touched, and he quickly stretched out his hands and grabbed the place where the bough and the 8-angled black ice grass touched. The light red soul power instantly invaded the 2, and the 2 began to resist spontaneously at the same time. Fortunately, Guangling had been reminded by Han Li long ago, and took the initiative to dispel the resistance of the martial soul, which made Han Li a lot more relaxed. He concentrated on dealing with the 8-angled black ice grass. Without the main source of resistance, Han Li's soul power quickly wrapped up the two. After completing the first step, the next thing was much easier. Han Li relied on his absolute control of the ice element and used his own soul power as a net to intercept all the ice-attributed poison of the 8-angled black ice grass and suppress it at the position of the bow handle. The rest of the energy was allowed to flow in the martial soul. A large amount of pure ice element power continued to strengthen the ice-attributed power of the martial soul, and finally established a channel through the martial soul and entered Guangling's body. Seeing this scene, Han Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the master's situation was much better than he expected. Perhaps because Guangling had reached level 97, and because of the matching of attributes, the energy in the 8-angled mysterious ice grass was drained by him just after an hour, but he still showed no signs of a breakthrough. Note, there are 2 versions in the original book. Here, the title above level 95 is adopted, and the soul power doubles for each level increase. Fuck, is this the immortal grass? After the elemental power is strengthened, it will wilt, right? This is too short. Han Li rarely cursed in his heart, but fortunately he had considered this problem at the beginning. He no longer hesitated and directly summoned the evolved Ice and Fire Dragon Bao, which triggered the energy of the Ice and Fire Yin-Yang Eyes. With the martial soul as the guide and acting as a bridge, he quickly converted the energy into ice attributes and input it into Guangling's martial soul. The huge movement awakened Douluo, who was still practicing. He stared at the scene in front of him in amazement, full of shock. Then, he took the initiative to give up practicing and acted as a guard outside. Sure enough, the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire were still powerful. With Han Li's full infusion, Guangling's body was faintly fluctuating in just 15 minutes. Suddenly, Guangling opened his eyes and nodded to Han Li. A hint of joy flashed across Han Li's face, and then he released the suppression of the ice-attributed poison on the bow handle and took the initiative to retreat. Douluo also came over at this time, with a faint envy in his eyes. He knew that this was a sign of an upcoming breakthrough. He had been stuck at level 91 for several years and had not moved, and he had to endure the erosion of the poison all the time. Guangling's breakthrough gave him hope. If he could break through at level 97, he would be able to make some progress at least. Chapter 61. The soul power fluctuations around Guangling became stronger and stronger, and even the mist close to him began to turn into ice crystals under his influence, which continued to sprinkle towards the ground. Han Li was about to remind him, perhaps because he had the news of the last breakthrough as a reference. Guangling also realized that this was not his house, and breaking anything would be enough to make him feel distressed for a long time. So under the gaze of the two people, Guangling stood up suddenly, and before she had time to say hello, the wings behind her spread out of thin air, soaring towards the sky, and soon disappeared from their sight. Douluo saw the light red light in Han Li's eyes and asked with some envy, "What's the situation now? Tell me." Before Han Li could speak, he saw a strong light in the sky. The milky white light spread out in mid-air, briefly covering the blue sky, and under the sunlight, a white light appeared on the inside and outside. Colorful round rainbow traces. Successful, Master is returning. In fact, he no longer needed to answer, the situation in mid-air had already explained everything. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Guangling's laughter coming from above his head. Xiao Li is right, I am now level 98. Along with the light feathers, there were a large number of ice crystals that fell together. However, when they reached the mouth of the valley, they quickly melted under the influence of the ice and fire eyes below and turned into raindrops. Han Li and Douluo had to hold on above their heads. He used the soul shield to prevent his clothes from getting wet. Congratulations, Master, for taking one step further. Congratulations. The voices of Han Li and Douluo rang out, and their eyes fell on Guangling, who had returned to the ground. Haha, same joy, same joy. Guangling answered happily, the excitement on his face was beyond words. Hey, can you open your left eye? Douluo looked at Guangling's left eye in surprise. He saw that the place where it was previously covered with dark blue ice crystals was now completely white, and there was nothing unusual about it at all. That's right, the star anise ice grass has repaired the flaws of before, and the restrictions on me no longer exist. I will be in a perfect state from now on. Guangling said vaguely, subconsciously concealing some content. He was able to answer Douluo because he had just made a breakthrough and was in a good mood, plus it was for the sake of his apprentice. Han Li was also happy when he heard his master's answer. Although Guangling has always shown that he doesn't care very much, as a top archer, his left eye has always been restricted, which is something he doesn't want to mention easily. With this unexpected gain, he is naturally happy for his master. Not only that, my martial spirit has also been strengthened a lot, and the ice element attached to it has been greatly strengthened. Also, I can also selectively use the poison attached to the 8 anise ice grass. As he spoke, a divine bow emitting milky white light appeared in Guangling's hand. It seemed that its shape had not changed much, but just by looking at it, you could detect the coldness in it. Is this considered the ultimate ice? Or is it the so-called infinite proximity? Han Li felt the ice element fluctuations on the Guangling divine bow and teased in his heart. To be honest, he wasn't even sure whether his martial soul was the so-called ultimate ice. After all, he hadn't finished reading the sequel at all, and various settings emerged one after another. Fortunately, Douluo didn't have this setting, so don't worry about it. Isn't it just that the cultivation will be a little slower? With his cultivation speed, there is really no need to worry. Forget it, as long as it can fight, it will be fine. Seeing that the strength of the ice element in Guangling Divine Bow is still slightly weaker than his own, Han Li gave up thinking. What are you thinking about? Xiao Li. Guangling interrupted Han Li's meditation, smiled and stretched out her hand to flick his forehead. The sudden attack made Han Li subconsciously protect his head with both hands and take a few steps back. Then, he found that the surroundings suddenly became quiet, and at the same time, Guangling's somewhat depressed and angry voice came from his ears. Xiao Li, tell me, what happened to your hands? Is this caused by the time you used your martial soul to help me conduct energy? Feeling the emotion in Guangling's words, Han Li noticed that his subconscious action just now was to accidentally raise his hands, which Guangling saw. It's okay, master, don't worry, I'll just take some time to practice. Han Li smiled and took down his hands, spread them out on his own initiative, with the backs of his hands facing up, and placed them in front of the two of them. I saw that his hands were covered with dense two-color scales from the back of the hands to the wrists. They looked very ferocious, and they also exuded a faint aura that only advanced dragons can have. Tell me, what's going on? Guangling did not believe his lies, but looked at him seriously. Han Li's condition was obviously eroded by something, and Douluo also cast a concerned look at him. Han Li sighed helplessly, forget it, let's be honest, you can't hide it. He sorted out his thoughts and looked up at the two people in front of him. Master, Senior, didn't you ask me before why my martial soul couldn't be touched? And why did the dragon's pressure appear inexplicably? I'll tell you now. If I'm not wrong, the reason why my martial soul has undergone this change is due to the ice and fire eyes. When the martial soul evolved before, I could clearly feel that these so-called pools of water were probably not at all. It's not pool water, it's made from the corpses and blood of extremely high-level dragons. Dragon essence and blood, what kind of dragon essence and blood can form such a treasure land, and even affect the surroundings, growing so many heavenly materials and earthly treasures? The eyes of Guangling and Douluo were shocked, and they couldn't help but turn their heads to look at the very calm eyes of ice and fire, and murmured. Maybe it's a god. Han Li replied with a smile. God? That's right. Perhaps only blood at the level of gods can have such power. Guangling thought of the angel gods worshipped by the Wuhan temple, and his face gradually turned ugly. He looked at Han Li, so, Xiao Li, your Wuhan has not evolved, but has been eroded. No, master, my martial spirit has indeed evolved. Han Li shook his head and refuted Guangling's statement, because my ice and fire bow is a complete fusion of ice and fire, it has not been eroded, but has been forcibly swallowed by it. Some of the beneficial energy completes evolution. But because of this, I voluntarily gave up the pursuit of a higher level martial spirit. The current martial spirit in my body simply cannot withstand the complete evolution. If I am forcibly promoted, I must accept the dragon's blood and the residual spiritual will in it. Baptism. When the time comes, it is likely to be contaminated and eroded. I will still not be me. I don't know what will happen to the ice and fire bow. That's why I took the initiative to give up after reaching the limit of my own endurance. As for the active activation of the martial spirit, it should be because the remaining will in it has not been completely expelled. My hands are in the same situation, but they are still under control. As long as you give me time, I can expel them. No, I don't want to become a soul beast. Hearing his words, Guangling and Douluo finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the problem was not serious, but at this time, the eyes they looked at the ice and fire eyes already contained some fear. You are not allowed to act like this again in the future, do you hear me? Otherwise, you will be treated as if I don't have you as my disciple. Guangling turned his head and looked at Han Li seriously. Don't worry, master. I know that this is a special situation and I won't take risks easily. Seeing the master's reaction, Han Li knew that he had passed this test. He quickly smiled and leaned forward and began to massage the master's arms. Go away, you are not allowed to practice directly with the pool water here in the future, you understand? Otherwise I will break your legs. I don't want to have a monster disciple. Guangling pulled him aside with a look of disgust, but her tone was full of love and care. Okay, master, no problem. Master, you have to have confidence in me. Even if you don't rely on this thing, the youngest person to be banned in the future will only be me. Han Li smiled and stepped forward again, and the master and apprentice began to fight. Douluo enviously glanced at the good communication atmosphere between masters and apprentices, and comforted himself in his heart, it's okay, I still have Yanyan, I'm not envious. Chapter 62. After playing around for a while, the atmosphere finally relaxed. Guangling looked at the two injured in front of him, one big and one small, and said, okay, next, you two should recover first. I'll be watching here, nothing will happen. By the way, Xiao Li, how long will it take for you to recover? It will probably take at least half a month. Han Li said uncertainly. Will the recovery period affect your absorption of spirit rings? You can tell me in advance what you want for your third spirit ring, and I will help you find it around. It just so happens that there is someone who is often active here, let him give you some reference. While speaking, Guangling gave Douluo a look, and Douluo nodded, as if he agreed. Han Li thought for a moment, raised his head and said, for the sake of safety, forget it. We can wait a little longer. But as for the soul beast, I need you to help me find it in advance. My physical strength is comparable to that of a soul emperor, and my mental strength is comparable to that of a non-spiritual soul king. However, I haven't taken the longing dew yet, but it should be enough after taking it. The soul beast's age limit will be between 15,000 and 20,000 years. As for the soul beast, let's follow the original plan. I'll take the amplification route for the first 3 rings. Well, now I have the ability to penetrate armor, and the elemental power itself is enough, and even if it can attack in groups without the help of martial spirits, and the range attack capability does not need to be considered. My idea is to increase the overall amplification or increase the range, or increase the speed of the arrow. But considering that there is also the Ice and Fire Dragon Blade, it is best that the Soul Beast has the ability suitable for dual blades, such as increasing the attack speed or breaking the shield. Well, if possible, I hope it can still fly. According to past experience, I should be able to inherit it completely, hee. As he spoke, Han Li couldn't help laughing out loud embarrassedly, as if his request was a bit too much, and he blushed a little. Guangling and Douluo beside him heard his request, and their faces turned black. It's not that they are not good. If it is a single type, it can be easily met, but with so many conditions combined, they really can't think of any soul beast that can meet the conditions for a while. Guangling thought of the golden scale eagle that the martial spirit hall staff had come to find before. He didn't care about it before. He could only say that it was fortunately the second soul ring. If it were changed to the current conditions, even if there was strength in numbers, it would definitely be miserable. Han Li looked at the expressions of the two and spoke again, if it really doesn't work, normal strength and speed types are also okay. In fact, I don't have to meet all of them. Anyway, I don't rely on soul skills very much now, and I can slowly make up for it later. Guangling took a deep breath, looked at Douluo who was a little skeptical about life but still thinking hard, and sighed, it's okay, anyway, you won't absorb it immediately. Wait until tomorrow, I will go back to the Wuhan Hall and mobilize people to help you check. I will continue to help you find it. You don't have to worry about this matter. Solve your problem first. Douluo, you go back with me and buy some daily necessities by the way. Guangling suddenly turned his head and looked at Douluo, with a look that could not be refused. Douluo didn't say anything, but nodded as an agreement. He knew very well that Guangling was still guarding against him, but he could understand that if it were him, he would do the same. It just so happened that he was going to go back and explain some things in advance. He didn't reject it when he saw Yan Yan on the way. Seeing that his master had made a decision, Han Li did not refute it, but walked to the side, found a place to sit down, and started practicing. He also had to solve the hidden dangers in his body and martial spirit as soon as possible. The yin-yang eyes of ice and fire became quiet, and the three of them started practicing. The other two adjusted their bodies, while Guangling stabilized the realm he had just broken through and familiarized himself with the surge in power. The next morning, under the pretext of eating too much meat, he asked Douluo to go out and find some edible vegetables and fruits. Guangling sent him out without paying attention to his contemptuous look. After making sure Douluo had left, Guangling pressed Han Li on the chair with a slightly red face, rubbed his hands a little embarrassedly, and asked in a slightly flattering tone, "Xiao Li, I wonder what you are going to do with the 2 fire-attributed immortal herbs." Hearing his words, Han Li instantly guessed his thoughts, but he did not hide it, and said openly, "I wonder which one you need, master. As for the coxcomb phoenix sunflower, it is a pure yang tonic and cannot be eaten casually. And its main function is to purify, and it can only be said to be incidental to the strengthening of fire attributes and the improvement of soul power. As for the fiery apricot vegetable, you also know that its fire attribute is not inferior to the ice attribute of the 8-angled mysterious ice grass. Although it is very strong, it is difficult for ordinary soul masters to absorb it directly. Then the fiery apricot vegetable," Guangling said tentatively, his face a little hot. Including the ones he ate, he directly took 2 of the top ones. Although both had great defects after being split, their preciousness is still beyond doubt. "Okay, master, here you go." Han Li took out a jade box from his wristband, which contained a fiery red cabbage. He handed it to Guangling and asked another question. "Do you need me to prepare some drugs to assist absorption?" Guangling took the box blankly and answered subconsciously, yes, it would be best if you can also give me a few for recuperation." "Okay, then wait a minute. I need time to prepare the medicine. You can go to the side and rest first." Han Li did not ask the reason and immediately drove away Guangling, who was ready to help. Guangling did not care about his attitude. He just watched Han Li start to prepare the medicine and fell into deep thought. Something is wrong. Why didn't Xiao Li ask the reason? Why don't you ask? I will tell you if you ask me. Could it be that this kid has guessed something? Impossible, absolutely impossible. How could he know? There would be no relevant things in the records of the spirit hall. Hiss, he wouldn't think I have a dog outside, would he? While preparing the medicine according to the prescription recorded in the booklet, Han Li sensed the changes in his master's expression through the perception of his tentacles. He couldn't help laughing in his heart. His facial expressions were really rich. The reason why he didn't ask was actually very simple, because he knew, but he didn't want to know. It would be better to ignore it and avoid getting into trouble. If the master wants it, then give it to him. It's just a poisonous fairy grass. The key is that it is useless to him. Moreover, if he is not strong enough or his martial soul is not of good quality, it will be difficult to successfully absorb it. Since Guangling wants to give it to Jianrongxiu, then hand it over as protection fee. After returning, give those, which can be called the flooded earth dragon golden melons compared to other fairy grasses. Who can say that he is not? Well, other top-grade medicinal materials can also be distributed, but forget about the fairy grass, which is his foundation. As for Uncle Qingluan, it's a pity that there is no fairy grass with wind attribute here, but there are still many quasi-fairy grasses of the level of 9th grade purple fungus, so it is not a problem for him to break through. What a bullshit fairy grass that only one person can take, it's bullshit. As long as it is not a conflicting fairy grass, you can continue to chew it after digestion, there is no problem at all, at most the effect is worse. If it weren't for his body's current limit due to the baptism of ice and fire, he would have to chew a few more plants for fun, that's how extravagant it is. Qirong Tong Dianju, Xiang Sijiduan Hong, these are what he prepared for Sister Xiu'er. With the fairy grass as a foundation, as long as he has a little luck in the future, maybe the first dark gold fear claw bear martial spirit in human history will appear. As for not being able to do so, it is not within his consideration. What is the father of luck? Leaning back. 9th grade Dragon's Hiwo, tentatively said to Duguyan, even if this girl does not marry him, the grandfather and grandson have been tied to the chariot by him, and he can't be perfunctory. Okay, see if you want to add a Narcissus jade muscle bone, the passive beauty effect of this fairy grass is also good. Snake martial spirits with smooth skin, hiss, how about letting Grandpa Douluo try to swallow a dragon with a snake? Snakes may not necessarily be worse than dragons, you can try, let him choose at that time. As for Kiluo tulips, 8-petal fairy orchids, plus some quasi-fairy grasses not mentioned in the original book, we will talk about it later. At worst, he could wait until his level was higher and actively mobilize the power of the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire to produce some more medicinal materials. Although they were not as good as the immortal grass, they were enough. Thinking of this, Han Li felt much happier, and even his actions of preparing the medicine became faster, which made Guangling on the side even more confused. Chapter 63. Han Li prepared the medicine in a familiar way, checked it again, and handed it to Guangling after confirming that there was no mistake. He took out a notebook and wrote down in detail how to take it, precautions, etc., focusing on attentive service. Guangling accepted all the things in a confused manner without waiting for his apprentice to ask. He wanted to explain many times, but was interrupted by Han Li deliberately and led the topic to other directions. While the master and apprentice were arguing with each other, Douluo, who was assigned to find vegetables and fruits, came back. Guangling also gave up explaining. Forget it, let's talk about it later. The three of them boiled some vegetables casually, combined with the dry food they brought with them, and ate some fresh fruits, which was considered breakfast. After the two titles walked around again, they confirmed that there was nothing that would threaten Han Li's safety, and set off on the road back to Tiandu City. Guangling looked at Han Li who waved and sent them away, and couldn't help muttering in his heart, it's strange, how can this kid hold back from asking? Douluo, who was traveling with him, couldn't help but turn his head to look at him, and asked curiously, what's wrong with you? Can't bear to part with your apprentice? It's only one day, it shouldn't be that serious, right? Guangling looked at Douluo, who was younger than him but looked much older than him, and said sinisterly, if you can't talk, you don't have to talk. Guess if I secretly kill you on the way and go back to tell Xiao Li that you are going to escape, do you think he will treat it as nothing happened? You. Douluo glanced at him angrily, and didn't bother to pay attention to Guangling, who changed his face like turning a book, and went straight to the direction of Tiandu City. Tisk. Guangling looked at the back of the little old man in front of him, and suddenly froze for a moment, and a thought suddenly came to his mind. 9 years old and 7 years old are only 2 years apart. He Douluo can do it, but I Guangling can't do it. Xiaoxiu is only 9 years older than his apprentice. When he becomes a title, it is just a fraction of his age. Besides, in the Soul Master world, especially among high-level Soul Masters, young husbands and old wives and young wives are common. Xiaoxiu is the only descendant of the Qian family, so she must continue her bloodline, right? At least you can try. It is better to give it to your own apprentice than to give it to others. It is not good for outsiders. Besides, his apprentice is not worse than Xiaoxiu. According to Han Li's speculation, his martial soul is likely to be upgraded to a god-level martial soul in the future. At that time, isn't this a proper match? With this thought, Guangling was like a demon. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. It was not until Douluo's shout came from the front that he was awakened from his meditation and accelerated to catch up. In the process of catching up, Guangling thought of Douluo's words and couldn't help touching his storage belt. This thing, how about saying that it was given by Xiao Li? Anyway, with the relationship between Xiaoxiu and I, we don't need this thing to maintain our relationship. Well, it's decided, but I can't say it too bluntly. Xiao Li can't possibly know Xiaoxiu. Let's use the excuse of a friend's junior. It's always good to make a good impression. At this time, Han Li didn't know that Guangling's mind had problems. He was still trying to deal with his own hidden dangers at the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire. At this time, in Notting College thousands of miles away, Tang San, who got up early, felt a little unlucky after completing the training of the purple demon pupil. Who would have thought that at the critical moment of collecting purple chi, a group of birds would fly over his head, and they didn't go to the toilet, causing him to have to take a bath again early in the morning. By the way, there is an urgent order today, and I have to go to the blacksmith shop to deal with it now. Tang San shook his head, threw away the ominous premonition, and quickly walked out of the college and headed towards the blacksmith shop. On the way, he couldn't help but complain about his teacher and the spirit hall in his heart. Damn it, it's been more than a year, and I didn't expect that after that, the spirit hall actually stopped paying subsidies to the master and apprentice. Even though the people who had a conflict with Yu Xiaogang at that time had been transferred, their treatment was not restored. He had to rely on the income from the blacksmith shop to get the living expenses for the two of them, so even when Xiao Wu asked him to borrow money, he couldn't come up with any spare money. It was really embarrassing. Yu Xiaogang later went to make a scene, but it ended in nothing. In a word, the master and apprentice were blacklisted. Seeing the blacksmith shop in front of him, Tang San put away his complaints in his heart. He really deserved to die. Once a teacher, a father for life. Why did he complain about the teacher because of a little unhappiness? It was all the fault of the spirit hall. They couldn't see clearly and let the theoretical master like the teacher be covered in dust. I must work hard to clear the name of the teacher, and I must reflect on my mentality just now. I will try to make more tools in the morning and treat the teacher to chicken legs at noon to apologize. Tang San took a deep breath and walked into the blacksmith shop. After nodding and greeting his colleagues, he came to his workbench and skillfully swung the hammer in his hand. Don't worry, teacher, I'll give you an extra lunch to apologize. Thinking of this, Tang San felt full of energy. He exerted force with the hammer in his hand, and the workbench collapsed instantly. The red-hot iron block hit his left toe at a very fast speed under the hammer. Ah! A young man's voice of rebuke sounded, and the blacksmiths in the blacksmith shop hurriedly surrounded him and saw Tang San covering his left foot. The toe of the shoe had been burned through, and the big toe was swollen and there were traces of burns on it. A group of blacksmiths hurriedly carried him out and checked his injuries. It's okay, it's okay. It's just a slight burn and a hit. Just take care of it briefly. The people in the blacksmith shop didn't care. This kind of situation has happened before, and it's not unusual. Tang San, you are a spirit master, you should recover faster, go back and rest first. The owner of the blacksmith shop paused, then continued, the salary during the recovery period will still be counted, but, as you also know, the goods are required to be delivered within 3 days. Looking at your situation, you can't catch up. I promised you before that I can only share the profits with others. Is that okay with you? Tang San, who had simply dealt with the injury, felt the heartbreaking pain coming from his toes, and couldn't help but want to stand up to show that he could still work, but as soon as he stood up, he couldn't help but grin. Okay, boss, I'll go back first and come back when the injury heals. Tang San reluctantly gave up the plan of working with injuries. Haha. It's nothing. Go back and recuperate, and come back when you are healed. You are a soul master, but you can come to work with us. Your skills are not bad, but you are afraid of losing your job. The owner of the blacksmith shop patted his shoulder and said with a smile. Come on, let's bring an apprentice and take Tang San back to the academy. The rest of us have dispersed. Xiao Wang, go and clean up the workbench. Let's all work harder and try to complete this batch of goods ahead of schedule. I'll treat everyone to a drink when we're done. Let's go. An apprentice came to Tang San and helped him walk out. Tang San didn't refuse. Until he walked out of the blacksmith shop, he could still hear the tinkling sounds coming from the blacksmith shop behind, much denser than before, obviously inspired by the boss's promise. Forget it, Tang San let out a breath, he didn't get this quick money, he might as well go back and recuperate. It just so happens that I will take a break after studying with the teacher for a few days. If he had known that he would encounter catastrophe when he got up, he might as well have given up on obtaining purple energy today, and he shouldn't have come to the blacksmith shop. Today was really unlucky. Chapter 64. On the other side, while Han Li was still working hard to get rid of the erosion, Guangling and Douluo had returned to Tiandu City. Will you come with me or make an appointment? Douluo turned his head and looked at Guangling beside him. Along the way, there was something wrong with this 98th level Super Douluo, and he stopped arguing with him. He was always thinking about something with a weird expression, and would stare at his back from time to time, which made his hair stand on end. Let's meet at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's meet here and go there together. Guangling glanced at Douluo and replied happily. Then I'll leave. Don't regret it later. Douluo pointed at the city gate and said tentatively. Gun, what the hell, I'm not threatening you. You're not used to it, are you? Guangling glared at him angrily. He was not targeting Douluo, but he always despised most people equally. Okay, see you in the afternoon. When Douluo saw his reaction, he ran straight to the city gate. It wasn't until he was some distance away that the sound came. Well, first go to Wuhan Palace and tell Xiao Li the information about the soul beasts he is looking for, and then ask Salas to contact Xiaoxiu directly. By the way, send a message to Wuhan City and say that he has some insights. We'll stay a while longer. Perfect. Guangling ignored Dugubo's leaving figure, but stood there and pondered for a while before walking towards the city gate in a hurry. After Dugubo entered the city, he went straight to his mansion. When he returned home, he saw that everything was as usual. After asking the servant, he learned that Duguyan had not returned home during his absence, so he directly took some medicinal materials that he had collected, left a word, and left again in a cool manner. He originally wanted to go directly to Tiandu Royal Academy, but then he thought about being ordered by Guangling to go out to look for vegetables and wild fruits this morning, so he turned a corner and went to a shop not far away. 15 minutes later, he patted a bag hanging on his waist and walked out of the store with satisfaction. Then he called a carriage and headed towards Tiandu Royal Academy. Dugubo is an old acquaintance of Tiandu Academy. Everyone knows that this guy is a maniac about doting on his granddaughter. After the guard smelled the familiar medicinal materials mixed with a faint fishy smell, he decisively let him go. He also looked proudly at the little brother who had just taken up the post and raised his eyebrows proudly to show off. Yes, Qianrongxi works very quickly, and one of the original 2 guards has been replaced. The remaining guard, Wuhan, is a canine spirit beast. His unique ability is to recognize the scent of people he has seen. The guard around him was inexplicably transferred yesterday, and he had a guess in his mind that the fool probably did this because he had to check the credentials of some important person and offend someone. Unlike him, who subconsciously remembers the smell when meeting a big shot, he has never offended anyone or made a mistake. Dugubo didn't care about the guard's attitude. He was a regular visitor here. Even if the 3 major education committees of the college saw him, they would have to salute politely. How could he remember such a small person? After calculating the time, he headed directly towards the training ground of the Imperial Fighter Team. Although Duguyan and the others are not the latest contestants yet, they have lost the right to own this place because the recent ones have been too wasteful. At present, the most talented people in the academy have enjoyed early training and prepared for the future. Prepare for the competition. Sure enough, as soon as Dugubo appeared at the edge of the training ground, he saw Duguyan who was resting aside. Judging from her condition, she should have just finished a round of training. Goose. A smile appeared on Dugubo's old face involuntarily. Grandpa, you are back. When Duguyan heard a familiar voice, he turned around and saw his grandfather standing on the edge of the training ground, smiling at him. Teacher, my grandpa is here. I'll go over there. It'll be quick and it won't affect the training. Duguyan politely greeted Qin Ming, who had just become a teacher. No problem, you go ahead. It's rest time now, you don't need to tell me. When Qin Ming saw Duguyan asking for his opinion, a smile appeared on his face involuntarily and he replied kindly. Not long after he joined the job, it was unexpected and lucky that he became the teacher of Huangdo Battle. It must be said that although these geniuses are arrogant, they are very good at basic courtesy, which makes them feel satisfied as a teacher. What's more, he knew clearly that Duguyan's grandfather was also the famous poison Douluo. Both his grandfather and grandson were very restrained and did not violate the teaching regulations. They also gave him a basic face, so he could handle this step. Seeing Duguyan running towards the old man, among the rest of the people, a strong young man in blue clothes with short hair couldn't help but turn around and take a few secret glances. At the edge of the training ground, Duguyan plunged into his grandfather's arms. He arched his head slightly before raising his head with a pouted mouth. Grandpa, according to the time we agreed on before, you were 2 days late. I'm angry. Have you figured out how to compensate me? When Dugubo saw his granddaughter acting coquettishly towards him, he couldn't help but smile and grin, ruffled her hair and coaxed softly, Grandpa knows he was wrong, Yan, tell me, whatever compensation you want, Grandpa will definitely do it. Arrive. Well, I can't think of it right now. Let's talk about it later when I think about it. Duguyan tilted his head slightly, put his hands behind his back, thought for a while, shook his head, and chose to store his wish temporarily. Okay, then I'll listen to you and save it first. Dugubo looked at his granddaughter and showed a loving smile. Then, inadvertently, he noticed Yu Tianheng peeking over here, and couldn't help but his face darkened slightly, and he snorted coldly. When Duguyan saw her grandpa's expression changing, she curiously turned her head and followed his gaze. She happened to see Yu Tianheng turning around and understood why Grandpa was angry. Okay, Grandpa, ignore him. I won't fall in love with your granddaughter. He is too hesitant and has no manliness at all. Duguyan smiled and hugged Dugubo's arm and shook it. Hearing this, Dugubo's face looked much better. To be honest, although he felt sorry for his granddaughter, he actually did not object to her falling in love. After all, according to Duguyan's age, she was already considered an adult in Douluo continent. What he didn't like was that it wasn't the first time that the boy saw him, but every time he was submissive, he didn't even dare to go up and say hello. After all, he is also a genius of the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even the parents of the girl he is chasing don't dare to look directly at him, so what future can he have? Fortunately, Yan Yan didn't like him either, but a good girl was afraid of stalking a man, so she didn't care in the past. Seeing that he had some power behind him, even if he died, he could still protect Yan Yan. But now, with the example of Han Li here, go away what Yu Tianheng, what blue electric Tyrannosaurus. Talent, strength, background, courage, and character were all crushed in every aspect. To be honest, he couldn't stand him. It just so happens that I take advantage of this opportunity to give Yan Yan a little information. Based on his understanding of his granddaughter, she will definitely be interested in Han Li. Then maybe he won't need to interfere at all, and the two of them will be able to get along naturally. Wouldn't that be better? Old Guangling, just wait and call him uncle. We will see how crazy you are when the time comes. Ha ha ha, Dugubo couldn't help but smile proudly. Thinking of this, Dugubo couldn't wait to set up a soul shield around him and Duguyan. Regardless of whether they were here or at the edge of the training ground, the two started communicating in low voices. Chapter 65. It was not until the other members of the royal fighting team at the training ground started a new round of training that the soul shields around the two of them dissipated. Yan Yan, go to train first. I'll wait for you on the side. Let's go home for lunch together at noon. Dugubo was still very measured. He only said those things that could be said. After a little bit, he aroused his granddaughter's curiosity. Okay, then Grandpa, wait for me for a while. The morning training is almost over. Duguyan just knew the beginning, and was interrupted by her grandfather. Although she was very uncomfortable, she saw that the soul shield had been lifted, so she walked to the training ground honestly. But what about the effect? In the following training, Duguyan was distracted frequently and looked at Dugubo on the sidelines from time to time. As for the others, they were watching with titles, and their performance was so hard. In contrast, there was no cooperation at all, which made Qin Ming a little bit unbearable to watch, and he took the initiative to stop the training. Forget it, let's stop here for the morning training. This way, there will be no effect. I'll give you a rest today, but you must not do this tomorrow, understand? Hearing Qin Ming's words, Duguyan lowered her head with a hot face. She also knew that her performance in the presence of her grandfather affected others. She couldn't help complaining in her heart that she must give her grandfather a good lesson after returning home at noon. Pulling his beard, really, talking halfway, made her always distracted. After everyone answered in unison, the training ended early. Duguyan greeted her teammates and went straight to her grandfather on the sidelines, and then left Tiandu Royal Academy under the gaze of others. On the other side, after Guangling returned to the Spirit Hall, he found Saras as soon as possible and told him Han Li's request. Then, when Saras secretly looked at his changes, he handed over the other two things to him and ran to the canteen of the Spirit Hall. This time, Han Li had to recover for at least 10 days, plus the follow-up matters, so the time would not be short. There is no shortage of medicinal materials for the time being, but for food, it is better to take ready-made ones directly or ask others to prepare them, so as not to affect Xiao Li's recovery. He did not forget that Han Li did not need to waste this time, and it was because he helped him break through that he became like this. As a master, he can't do much, but he will take care of the logistics during this period. Guangling thought so and did so at the same time. He did not waste words. He took the bishop token he had just received from Saras and unceremoniously ordered the kitchen to pack a lot of various ingredients. After casually instructing them to prepare a few tables of ready-made dishes, he returned to his room to wait. Saras's efficiency has always been unquestionable, and Qian Rongxiu seems to have nothing to do now. In just an hour, Saras brought news that everything had been handled and Guangling could go there at any time. He just needed to sneak in carefully according to the established route. Guangling patted Saras on the shoulder with satisfaction, signaling him to work hard in the future. After saying a lot of nonsense learned from Han Li, he packed up the prepared things and disappeared in the spirit hall. Not to mention that after Saras got the response, he happily ordered the staff of the spirit hall of Tiandu city to search for the information of the soul beast Han Li needed. After leaving the spirit hall, Guangling changed into a new disguise according to the plan, and easily entered the prince's mansion in broad daylight, which made him sigh that the Tiandu Empire was really a waste. The main house of the prince's mansion, in the secret room. Qian Rongxiu, who once again returned to her daughter's body, happily welcomed Guangling in. Although she didn't know why Guangling came again after just 2 days, she was still very happy. Grandpa Guangling, aren't you going to take Han Li around? Did you encounter any accidents? There was no news from Saras that Guangling was about to leave, so Qian Rongxiu guessed so. Accident? It can be considered an accident, but to be precise, it's a surprise. Guangling kept it a secret at first, and only answered with a smile when Qian Rongxiu couldn't help asking. Surprise? What surprise? Qian Rongxiu glanced at Guangling, who was teasing her deliberately, but didn't expose him, and continued to act with him. Is it a surprise that I broke through to level 98? Guangling straightened his chest and said proudly. You broke through, of course it counts, congratulations, Grandpa Guangling. Qian Rongxiu was stunned at first, and then sent congratulations. Hey, didn't you break through to level 97 just a year ago? How could it be so fast? After Qian Rongxiu finished speaking, she reacted and asked subconsciously. Ha ha ha, it seems that Xiaoxiu has noticed it too, there must be a reason why I broke through so quickly. Guangling took off the hood on his head and blinked at Qian Rongxiu. What's the reason? Hey, Grandpa Guangling, your face and left eye can open at will? This. Qian Rongxiu suddenly stopped talking halfway and saw the white skin of Guangling's left eye. How is it? Xiaoxiu, am I more handsome? Guangling said conceitedly. Qian Rongxiu had long been accustomed to Guangling's speaking style, rolled her eyes and let him understand it himself. Okay, Xiaoxiu, no more jokes. Guangling put away his smile and became serious. The reason why I was able to break through and my eyes returned to normal is actually because of my apprentice. Qian Rongxiu blinked, did not interrupt him, and continued to listen quietly. When I was taking him, to play, we found a treasure place. We found some natural and earthly treasures in it. To be precise, they were jelly grass. You should have heard about it, Xiao Huahua liked it before. Collect these relevant records. Qian Rongxiu frowned and thought for a while before speaking uncertainly. I seem to have heard that Douluo's martial spirit is one of them, right? I don't know about the others. Guangling nodded and agreed with her statement before continuing, yes, that's it. It just so happens that Han Li likes these flowers and plants, and he even exchanged relevant records from Douluo some time ago. When talking about the exchange, Guangling couldn't help but pause for a moment, as if he thought of what happened before, but he continued talking. By coincidence, there happened to be a fairy grass suitable for him and me in that treasure land. So, after taking it, I not only succeeded in breaking through, but also repaired the soul bone in my left eye. Well, my martial soul also became stronger. When Guangling spoke, the smile on his face could not be concealed at all. Qian Rongxiu nodded gently and did not ask further questions. She knew that Guangling must have something more to say. Guangling didn't get the feedback he deserved, so he coughed lightly, suppressed the strangeness in his eyes, and looked at Qian Rongxiu. You know, Han Li has been filial since he was a child. Guangling's expression was very serious. Qian Rongxiu thought about Han Li's actions in the intelligence and nodded, which seemed consistent. So, I proposed that I have a junior who needs fire attribute fairy grass, you know. Guangling glanced at Qian Rongxiu and continued, then he decisively picked the best one and asked me to bring it to you, saying it was a gift for you. Of course, I didn't tell him your identity, not even whether you are a boy or a girl. He just gave it to you? And he said he would give it to me. Qian Rongxiu's eyes widened, as if she didn't believe it. Although she still had a vague concept of what celestial grass was, a treasure that could allow a super Douluo like Guangling to break through would definitely not be that bad. Even Grandpa can't do it. This was so different from the description in the intelligence, she couldn't help but want to get to know this junior uncle. I told you that Xiao Li is very generous to his own people. As soon as I mentioned it, he gave it to me and asked me to say hello to you on his behalf. Guangling raised her chin slightly and retorted without hesitation. What he told was absolutely the truth, so he was not afraid of Qian Rongxiu finding anything strange. However, it is true that Han Li did not send the things subjectively, but as master and disciple, there is no problem in saying that they are one, Guangling said to herself in her heart. Chapter 66. Guangling saw the hesitant look on Qian Rongxiu's face and immediately struck while the iron was hot. Oh, by the way, Xiaoxiu, when I said that my martial soul has become stronger, I didn't just say it casually. You can feel it and try its current strength. While speaking, Guangling controlled his breath and summoned the martial spirit. As soon as the Guangling divine bow appeared in the secret room, Qian Rongxiu felt that the surrounding temperature had dropped a bit. The water in the water glass on the table next to her was affected and instantly solidified into ice cubes. Qian Rongxiu unconsciously took a step back. Soul power enveloped her whole body, and then she looked at the martial spirit in Guangling's hand that seemed to be much colder than before. Is it enhanced so much? Qian Rongxiu murmured to herself. She had seen the Guangling divine bow more than once, but since her angel martial spirit had fire attributes, she had even played with Guangling's martial spirit in the past, but never like now, just getting close could make her feel cold. And the earlier you eat the fairy grass, the better. By the way, Xiaoxiu, Han Li is already at level 30. After getting the soul ring, he will probably reach level 32 at the worst. He is not yet 8 years old. Maybe he will really be able to catch up with you in the future. Guangling was still playing a trick, not mentioning that Han Li's first 2 soul rings had now become one black and one purple. Even the first soul ring could gradually increase its lifespan as his strength increased. As for the third soul ring, Han Li's, we are also preparing to directly obtain those close to 20,000 years old. It would be better for Qian Rongxiu to discover these things by herself later. It was somewhat inappropriate for him to say it. Curiosity is the biggest motivation for a person to understand another person. Although Guangling is almost 90 years old and still single and has never been in a relationship, he still knows some skills. He didn't give Qian Rongxiu a chance to refuse. While speaking, he took out the jade box and carefully placed it on the table. He also took out the auxiliary medicines prepared by Han Li by category. Finally, under Qian Rongxiu's gaze, she solemnly placed the booklet written by Han Li into her hands. Xiaoxiu, remember, you must follow the procedures in this manual exactly. Don't be careless. Even I don't dare to touch these fairy grasses easily. You can't just rely on your special martial soul to mess around. Do you understand? Qian Rongxiu opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but looking at Guangling's unyielding expression, she solemnly took the booklet. I will repay him later. Qian Rongxiu held it in for a long time, moved her lips slightly, and said something. Seeing Qian Rongxiu accept the gift, a smile appeared on Guangling's face again, and she waved her hand casually. There is no need to repay anything in return. We are a family, so there is no need for this. No, I still want it. This fairy grass is too precious. I, Qian Rongxiu, am not that kind of person. Qian Rongxiu didn't understand Guangling's words at all, and replied with a serious face. Okay, then I'll listen to you, Xiaoxiu. Guangling comforted him nonchalantly. Remember to take the time to find a safe place and let the Aguda protect you. If the fire poison is really strong, use the method described above by Xiao Li to expel it directly from the body. With the martial spirit characteristics of the Aguda, even if it comes with a certain fire attribute is better than just refining it. Well, it's not impossible to just give up on that part. Anyway, your martial soul doesn't lack that bit of supplement. Guangling added seriously, otherwise he was afraid that with Xiaoxiu's proud temperament, he would have to bear it and absorb it, and he would not be able to bear the trouble when the time came. Don't worry, Grandpa Guangling, I know that I have more important things to accomplish, and I won't give up just because of this. Qian Rongxiu felt Guangling's concern and said with a smile. Well, the main thing is that Xiao Li still needs my protection now. You can't leave Tiandu City for a long time, and I didn't tell him about you. Otherwise, it would be best to let Xiao Li help you absorb it. Guangling sighed. Hey? What happened? Qian Rongxiu heard something strange in Guangling's tone. Well, how should I put it? Guangling said with some embarrassment, actually, in addition to the effect of the fairy grass, Xiao Li also made great efforts in my breakthrough, which caused him to have some physical problems now and he needs time to recover. Otherwise, I will definitely let him help you absorb it perfectly. Is it serious? Having just received such an expensive gift, Qian Rongxiu asked subconsciously. It's not bad. It's just that the recovery time is a bit long, so it shouldn't affect subsequent growth. Guangling's expression was very complicated, but he didn't elaborate. If you need my help, Grandpa Guangling, remember to find me. Qian Rongxiu's expression was very serious. Haha, don't worry, if there is any place where Zioxuer can be used, I won't be polite. Guangling also replied with a smile. Okay, I have to go, remember, safety first, do you understand? Guangling pulled up his hood and turned around to give a warning. Don't worry, Grandpa Guangling, I know. Qian Rongxiu returned a sweet smile. After sending Guangling out of the door as usual, Qian Rongxiu returned to the underground secret room again, looking at the jade box, medicine and the not-so-exquisite booklet on the table, and fell into deep thought. She is now becoming more and more curious about Han Li, the little uncle. On the other side, Douluo and Douguyan's grandfather and grandson returned to the house in a carriage. Along the way, no matter how coquettishly Douguyan acted, Douluo kept silent about what happened just now, which made Douguyan almost stop talking to him. It was not until he returned home and dismissed the servants that Douluo looked at his granddaughter, who was still pretending to be angry, and turned her head away. Okay, Yan, don't be angry, Grandpa will apologize to you now, can't I continue to talk to you now? Douluo pulled Douguyan to sit down at the table. Really? Douguyan turned her head and asked reluctantly. Really, how could Grandpa lie to you? This is too important for the Douluo family. In the academy, I was not cautious enough. Aren't we going home now? Douluo coaxed his granddaughter in a good voice. What is so important? Mysterious. Douguyan became interested. Anyway, it's really important, Yan, you should not have forgotten about your father, right? Douluo's mood and voice became low when he mentioned this. Yet. Douguyan also showed a sad look. Grandpa and your father told you before that he was poisoned because of improper soul ring matching and weak body, and adjusted your soul ring acquisition because of that. In fact, they lied to you. In the astonishment of Douguyan, Douluo did not dare to look at her, but continued, I will tell you the truth now. Your father's death was not because of soul ring and body at all, but because of me. Because I took the wrong path when I was practicing, and I was complacent without knowing it, which led to my martial soul poisoning, and it was passed on to my descendants. And your most proud green eyes are also because of this. Your father and you are born with poison from the mother's womb because of this. By the time I found out, everything was too late. After finishing the words in one breath, Douluo, who lowered his head, didn't know when he had tears streaming down his face. Douguyan stood there blankly, looking at her nails that were deliberately dyed green, at a loss. She liked green, and she used to think it was a symbol of strength, but now, she was a little at a loss. Chapter 67. I don't know how long it took, but the dull atmosphere in the room finally became less oppressive. Douluo looked at his granddaughter, who was standing there blankly, with a flash of guilt in his eyes, and said softly, I'm sorry, Yan, I'm telling you this now. After hearing Douluo's words, Douguyan woke up from his daze. Seeing her grandfather's old demeanor and the way he tried to cheer up and comfort her, her heart was suddenly hit hard. Yes, her grandfather was no better than her. It was her father who died, but he was also his son. She was still young at the time, so what was the use of telling her? At least these years, her grandfather had always been responsive to her requests, and she only had this one relative. Grandfather. Douguyan threw herself directly into Douluo's arms, and her sobs continued to sound, and then quickly became louder, and the cries quickly spread throughout the room. It's okay to cry out, it's okay to cry out. Douluo was actually prepared that his granddaughter would resent him, but Douguyan's reaction was much better than he expected. Perhaps knowing such news all at once made Douguyan a little troubled and sad. As she cried, she lay in Douluo's arms and fell asleep. Looking at his granddaughter with tears on her face, Douluo sighed softly and sent her back to the room. Then he ordered his servants to prepare meals in advance and have them ready at any time. He just sat at the door of Douguyan's room, looking ahead blankly, not knowing what he was thinking. It wasn't until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that Douguyan woke up. She remembered what happened before and rushed out of the room quickly. She saw Douluo turned around and stood up, looking at her with a smile that was no different from usual. Grandfather. Duguyan remembered what happened in the morning and shouted a little nervously. Okay, you must be hungry after sleeping for so long. The food is ready. Let's go eat first. After dinner, I have something to tell you. I promise it will be a good thing this time. Dugubo stretched out his hand, and Duguyan handed it over skillfully, and the two of them walked towards the restaurant. Maybe it was because she was really hungry, or maybe it was because Dugubo's words made her very concerned. She ate very quickly this time, abandoning the so-called ladylike manners and aristocratic etiquette, and finished lunch in 3 strokes, 5 divisions and 2 divisions. After seeing her finish eating, Dugubo also put down his chopsticks and led her deeper into the mansion. Walking to a training room, Dugubo stopped. After repeatedly confirming that no one was around, he walked in with Duguyan, sealed the entire surrounding area, and laid down a layer of soul power shield before looking at his granddaughter in front of him. Remember the boy I told me about when we were at the academy? Is he really already level 30? Grandpa. Duguyan still didn't quite believe it. There was someone who was higher than her when she was younger. She was also a genius in the academy. If there really was such a person, she couldn't have heard of it. Dugubo glanced at her, shook his head, and said seriously, actually, I still hide something. Duguyan breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know why. After she saw her grandfather this time, he always liked to talk like this, which made her a little uncomfortable. What I didn't tell you is that he does look a little younger than you from the outside, but in fact, his actual age is even younger. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I had even touched him personally. Physically, I can't believe there is such a genius. Dugubo said with a sigh, his tone full of appreciation for the person he was speaking to. So, he is 12 years old this year? He can't be 11, right? Duguyan guessed uncertainly. No, he is only 7 years old, and he will not turn 8 until half a year later. Dugubo stared seriously into Duguyan's eyes. This is impossible. Has he started practicing since he was 1 year old? Grandpa, if you lied to me, find a better reason. This is purely. Halfway through Duguyan's words, looking at Dugubo who was still looking at her calmly, his voice gradually lowered, and finally he closed his mouth. She would not be wrong in her judgment. In her memory, her grandfather would only behave like this when discussing business matters with her father. After a long time, she swallowed the non-existent saliva and said with a dry mouth, "You are really only 7 years old. This is too ridiculous. I will never lie to you on this point. In fact, I met him 2 days ago. At that time, he was not so powerful, but he had reached level 23. Dugubo chose to tell the truth. Level 23, level 30, combined with his age, there is no difference to me. Duguyan rolled his eyes at his grandfather. Well, right? 2 days ago, that means he broke through level 7 in 2 days. Duguyan finally came to his senses and immediately went to find his grandfather for confirmation. Yes, we met during the treasure hunt. Dugubo unnaturally embellished his words. In front of his granddaughter, he was really embarrassed to say that he was beaten without any resistance, and he almost lost his life because of it. It's really good luck, but what does this have to do with you, Grandpa? Duguyan sighed with envy at first, and then asked. It's very relevant, because he can cure me and you of the blood poison, and even has other benefits. Dugubo said word by word. Duguyan blinked her eyes. She had not experienced poisonous body damage yet, and she still had not changed her mind for a while. Why do you think Grandpa disappears for so long every month? In fact, I am looking for a place to suppress the poisonous backlash. If I can't handle it, I will die. I don't want to hurt you. Dugubo said with a hint of bitterness. Grandpa, what about you now? There was a hint of crying in Duguyan's voice. She quickly took 2 steps forward, grabbed Dugubo's sleeves tightly with both hands, and looked up and down in a panic. Don't worry, it's okay for now, and nothing will happen in the future. Dugubo touched his granddaughter's hair and said softly. Because your level is low now, the toxins in your blood are not obvious yet. It's just that your eyes have been green since you were born. But as your cultivation level gets higher and higher, the toxins in your body will also follow the poison of the martial spirit itself. Grow up until you are like your father and can no longer be suppressed. At that time, even your grandfather will be unable to do anything. Fortunately, Grandpa was lucky enough to meet him. Grandpa, let's go find him quickly and let him save you. Duguyan pulled Douluo and wanted to walk out, but saw Douluo pulling her back with a smile. Don't worry, Grandpa came back this time to tell you about this. I have reached an agreement with him, and he will treat you and me. But it may take some time, and Grandpa doesn't know how long it will take, so I will come back and follow, just say it. Douluo's voice was softer than before. Conditions? What conditions? Is there anything I can do to help? Also, I'll go with you, Grandpa, I want to see you receive treatment with my own eyes. I don't want to stay at home alone anymore, promise me, okay? Duguyan raised her head stubbornly and stared at Douluo. She was a little scared, afraid that her grandfather was comforting her, afraid that Douluo would never come back, and afraid that she would be the only one left in the future. This. Douluo frowned. He didn't expect Duguyan to want to go with him. This was a bit beyond his expectation. Can't you? Duguyan asked softly, while carefully observing his grandfather's expression, trying to see something from it. But to her disappointment, she could only see that Douluo seemed to be really considering this issue seriously. After a while, Douluo looked up at her, showing a somewhat embarrassed expression. He didn't dare to take his granddaughter there without authorization. Boy Han Li could say that he was being reasonable, but he was really afraid that Guangling wouldn't give him any face and would easily kill both his grandfather and grandson. This grandpa doesn't seem to be able to make the decision. We need to discuss it with others. The place we are going to is somewhat special, and the identity of the person we want to meet is also somewhat special. Grandpa, take me with you. I will definitely be obedient. And since he can cure you, he will definitely treat me in the future. We have to meet after all, right? Seeing that her grandfather was a little shaken, Duguyan immediately used her tried and tested coquettish technique in the past, taking Douluo's arm and shaking it. It's not impossible. Grandpa will ask for you. Douluo gritted his teeth and gave in, then he looked at Duguyan again. Yan, then you should prepare first. Bring more clothes and things for survival in the wild. Grandpa will help you ask. However, I can only say to give it a try. If the other party does not agree, you should be honest in the academy. How about waiting for Grandpa to come back? Duguyan first made a gesture to himself in his mind, and realized that Douluo seemed to be really in trouble, and was also a little scared, so he believed a little more in what he said before. She didn't dare to make trouble at this time, and nodded obediently, indicating that she would obey the arrangement. Douluo breathed a sigh of relief, and after telling Duguyan not to tell anyone, he hurriedly left his mansion and ran towards the city gate. I hope Guangling is already here at this time, otherwise Yan will be disappointed, Douluo thought in his heart. Chapter 68. Chapter 68, The Insidious Rotten Snake, I Will Do It Myself. Based on the title Douluo's Footsteps, Douluo Mansion is not far from the city gate. Douluo, who was a little worried, quickly arrived at the appointed place even though he slowed down as much as possible. After looking around, he didn't find Guangling's figure. He was relieved and a little regretful at the same time. You can't blame Grandpa, Yan, it's your bad luck, he thought with a slight relaxation. What? Are you looking for me? Just when he was in a good mood and was about to go home and tell Duguyan the news, a familiar voice came from behind him. Who could it be if it wasn't Guangling? Douluo's body stiffened for a moment, then returned to normal. He turned around and saw Guangling looking at him with a smile on his face. People are scary, scary to death. If you suddenly make a noise behind someone else's back, you are not afraid of me spreading poison under the pressure. Douluo glanced at him angrily and said helplessly. It's just your strength, hey. Although Guangling did not continue speaking, the meaning was already quite obvious. Although the words were short, they were extremely insulting. Douluo spent 2 days with him and successfully received his radio waves. He clenched his fists tightly and then slowly released them. Forget it, I can't beat him, not to mention there are things to discuss with him. Don't be impulsive. Impulsiveness is the devil. Douluo silently comforted his injured heart in his heart. Okay, tell me what you want to do with me. It's probably not the scheduled time yet. If I hadn't seen you coming this way in the city, I'm afraid your trip would have been in vain. Also, your vigilance is too low. I followed you all the way and you didn't even notice. How can you reassure me that you can protect Xiao Li well in the future? While Guangling was talking, he still didn't forget to hit Douluo. I'm thinking about something. Douluo responded bravely, then quickly changed the subject and got down to business. By the way, I want to discuss something with you. When you go back this time, can you take my granddaughter with you? Douluo carefully observed Guangling's expression as he spoke. As he expected, Guangling's face suddenly turned gloomy when she heard his words, and she stared at Douluo with a seductive gaze. Have you told your granddaughter everything? Seeing his fierce reaction, Douluo quickly explained, No, I didn't say anything. I only told her that I was going to get treatment, and I only told her what I could about Han Li. Don't forget, I used to Wuhan has sworn it. Hearing this, Guangling's face became much better, but she still didn't let go of her lock on him. Douluo continued, I told her about the Wuhan poisoning. Yanyan was a little worried about me and wanted to go with her. Didn't I think that she would have to receive treatment in the future? Also, she will always have to deal with the evolution of martial arts. It is better to take it with her to avoid running around all the time and leaking the news. Anyway, now I have decided to defect to Han Li. I am just a granddaughter, so she will definitely join me. When the time comes, I will let her swear by the spirit of martial arts. Also, don't forget what I told you before. Wouldn't it be nice for the two of them to get in touch with each other in advance? When Douluo finished speaking, he winked at Guangling in a slightly obscene manner. Guangling glanced at Douluo with disgust. Okay, when I was chatting with you before, didn't I subconsciously forget about Xiaoxiu? Now that I think about it, can I still let you continue to do this? No, I have to find a way to destroy it. With Xiaoxiu's character, Xiu'er is okay, but it is absolutely impossible to know that Xia has other partners. Otherwise, refuse directly? No, Xiao Li seems to value these grandfathers and grandsons very much. It is not appropriate to let an old boy like Douluo act as a bodyguard for Xiao Li in the future. Also, what if Xia Li and Xiaoxiu can't get together in the future? I'm still waiting to play with my grandson. What a sinister snake by nature, I will do it myself. You actually asked me a difficult question, I will remember you, Douluo. Looking at Guangling, whose expression kept changing as if he was thinking about something, Douluo shivered for no reason. Then, whether it was his imagination or not, he found that Guangling seemed to dislike him even more. Several big question marks appeared on Douluo's forehead. Is Guangling okay? Why did he suddenly become ill again? Isn't it about agreeing or disagreeing? It's a matter of one sentence, and it's used like this? When you and I were talking about Han Li's fiancé, weren't you very happy? Guangling exhaled and looked at Douluo again, then take her with you. You can take care of her by yourself. Don't cause trouble to Xiao Li. Okay, no problem. Douluo replied happily when he heard that he agreed, and did not pay attention to his warning. Then go quickly, don't make me wait for you, we will set off as soon as you come. Guangling waved her hand, motioning for him to get out of here. Good. Douluo finished his sentence and ran towards the city. He wanted to go back and tell Yanyan the good news. Guangling found a shady place again, sat down, and thought about the next steps. He was careless before and fell into the trap of this old boy Douluo. On the other side, Douluo quickly returned home and found that Douyan seemed to have packed his things and was at the door constantly looking at the roads on both sides, waiting for news from him. Grandfather. As soon as Douluo's figure appeared, Douyan immediately went up to him and hugged his arm, wanting to know the answer. Okay, the other party agreed, we will set off soon. Douluo replied with a smile. Okay, Grandpa, can you tell me in advance where we are going? Who is the other party? Douyan let go of his arm, skipped a few steps forward, turned around, put his hands behind his back, and asked as he walked backwards. No, I swore on my martial arts soul. Anyway, you will know by night at the latest. Don't ask so many questions. Go into the room first and let me check what you have prepared. The time you have to go this time will not be short. There are many things to do. Very well prepared. Douluo replied decisively that he didn't dare to let Guangling wait for him, who knows if that guy would change his mind again. All right. Douyan said with a slight regret, but thinking that his grandfather and himself would be treated soon, his mood suddenly improved a lot. Yeah, and it's made so mysterious, just like the adventures mentioned in those storybooks. This excitement immediately dispelled the rest of her emotions, making her unable to help but look forward to it. Oh, walk faster, Grandpa. At this time, Douyan felt that Douluo's normal walking speed was a bit slow, so she trotted up behind him, put her hands on his back, and actively pushed him towards the house. Okay, listen to Yanyan, Grandpa, walk faster. Douluo smiled and quickened his pace. By the way, Yanyan, remember to send someone to the academy to inform you that I'm taking you to special training. Well, just ask for a month's leave first. If it's not enough, let's wait. Okay, I understand. You can hurry into the house and see what I'm missing here. When you leave, just ask someone to go to the academy to notify you. It won't be a problem. By the way, prepare more convenient clothes. The environment there is no better than at home or in the academy. The two walked into the house, but there were still faint sounds of conversation. Chapter 69. On the road from Tiandu City to Sunset Forest, 3 figures were running quickly. No, to be precise, it should be said that there are 2 figures, because one of them is held up by another person's soul power. The 3 of them were Guangling and Douluo's grandson. They were all disguised. Some people saw them from the road and were shocked by their speed. They moved away from a distance and did not dare to look up. Afraid of sudden disaster. Looking at the speeding figure in front of him who had not spoken since they met, Douluo couldn't help but asked in a low voice, "Grandpa, who is he? Why doesn't he even say anything to us? I don't take your title Douluo seriously." Douluo covered her mouth and made a gesture of silence. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart, "Auntie, please shut up. You can't say such nonsense. You may be fine by then. The one who suffered was my grandfather." Seeing that Guangling didn't seem to hear and didn't turn his head, Douluo quickly lowered his voice and reminded, "Yanyan, don't worry, you will know in a while, and you have to be polite. You have to address the person in front of you. His Majesty. Is he also a titled Douluo like you?" Douluo couldn't help but exclaimed, and then thought of Douluo's words, and quickly closed his mouth. Grandpa's attitude speaks volumes. He is no match for this guy. But how is that possible? This is not the first time she has seen a titled Douluo. She has also seen Sword Douluo and Bone Douluo from the 7 Treasures Glazed sect. Although he looks younger than his grandfather, he still looks middle-aged. As for this person, she has seen the face under the hood with her own eyes. It is no problem to say that he is 17 or 18 years old. How can he have such a young title? Even though she has never seen the Haoshan Douluo that was rumored before, but I'm afraid it can't compare to this one. How did she know that Guangling's baby face was a natural one? Anyway, don't ask any more, you will know later. Douluo was a little depressed and reminded him again. He was sure from Guangling's rank that Guangling was definitely much older than him, but it was very deceptive to make people look young. Well, the key is that he is still strong, otherwise he will definitely mock him like he mocked Huoguan. With Douluo's warning, Douluo didn't dare to say anything more, but she became more curious about what was going to happen next, and secretly began to guess in her heart what kind of person her grandfather wanted to bring her into contact with. There was no talking all the way, but with the 2 accounts working hard and setting off much earlier, they arrived at the edge of the Sunset Forest at 5 o'clock in the afternoon as originally agreed. Guangling took the initiative to stop, looked sideways at Douluo, and asked aloud, "Can you fly?" Douluo smiled awkwardly and replied, "It's okay to float for a short time, but if you want to fly, forget it, let's go downstairs. You are familiar with this place. You can lead the way and don't keep Xiao Li waiting." Guangling interrupted him directly and pointed ahead. "Good." Douluo pulled Douluo's arm, shook his head at his slightly angry granddaughter, and walked forward first, with Guangling following behind. What Guangling didn't expect was that Douluo in front suddenly turned his head, made a face at him, quickly turned his head again, and pulled Douluo forward a few steps. The little girl is quite interesting and has quite a temper. Guangling smiled, ignored her provocation, and quickly followed her. Soon, the 3 of them stopped in front of the poisonous miasma, and Douluo took out 3 pills and handed them to the 2 of them respectively. "This is an antidote pill, which can effectively resist the miasma here." Guangling took it, but did not take it directly. Instead, he put it away, took out the bottle of pills that Han Li had given him before from his storage belt, poured one and swallowed it. "Did Xiao Li make it?" Douluo glanced at the bottle he put away in surprise. "Well, if you want to study it, you can go back and ask him for it yourself. He still has a lot." Guangling had no intention of giving it to him. "Okay, Yanyan, swallow the pill and follow me." Douluo signaled Douluo to take the pills, and he swallowed one himself, then put up a soul shield around the two of them, and then walked towards the poisonous miasma. With the aboriginal people leading the way, it can only be said that the speed was very fast. In just over half an hour, the three of them appeared on the platform where Guangling and Han Li first settled. At this time, the sky had darkened slightly, and it was even darker here than other places in the forest because of the fog and mountain peaks. Duguyan stood on the platform and looked down. Although some of the fairy grass decorations were missing, the scenery here was still shocking enough. She couldn't help but exclaimed in amazement when she saw this scenery for the first time. "Is this right here? Grandpa, it's so beautiful." Why is there a strange voice? It sounds like a woman." After Guangling and Dugubo left, Han Li felt insecure. After thinking for a while, he dug out a stone chamber on the rock wall below the platform with his two knives. Of course, he did not destroy the vines hanging from above, but allowed them to block the entrance of the cave. He also used materials from his storage space to reinforce the stone chamber, so that if someone came, he would not be able to relax immediately if someone arrived. Discover him. Hearing the faint female voice, Han Li, who had just finished training, entered the fighting state without saying a word. The two swords that had changed greatly appeared in his hands in an instant. He also deliberately restrained all the elemental power to ensure that no light would be emitted. Only the soul ring, which he could not fully control, was hanging below, flashing a negligible light. He did not dare to explore directly above, but tried his best to restrain his breath and slowly moved to the entrance of the cave. As long as someone came down from above, he would definitely not be able to escape his sneak attack. Duguyan was still admiring the beautiful scenery above and kept talking to his grandfather. Guangling and Dugubo's faces became extremely strange, with an expression that wanted to laugh but could not laugh out loud. Han Li did not dare to explore, but they did. The first time they came here, they found Han Li under the rock wall, and his actions were clearly seen by the two of them. Well, it can only be said that he is really cautious. Duguyan was talking and found that there was something wrong with Grandpa's expression. She stopped talking and touched her face. There was nothing. What happened to Grandpa? Ahem. Guangling on the side suppressed his smile, interrupting the delicate atmosphere, and shouted directly to the bottom, "Xiao Li, come out, we are back." Han Li, who was concentrating on guarding against the enemy, could not help but stiffen his body and change his expression slightly when he heard the familiar voice. After a few seconds, the expression on his face had returned to calm. He silently retracted his martial spirit, lifted the vines in front of him, and walked out. "Okay, Master, Senior, you can come down." Han Li's answer came from the basin below. Hearing the voice, Duguyan's eyes lit up slightly. The owner of this voice should be the young man that Grandpa said. She wanted to see what kind of person he was. Not only did he practice so fast at such a young age, but he also knew so much and could get Grandpa's recognition. Guangling and Dugubo looked at each other and nodded. The two of them took Duguyan down. Chapter 70. Ah! A sharp female voice sounded in the basin where the ice and fire eyes were located. I saw Duguyan, who had just fallen, screamed and stood in the open space in a strange posture. Her left foot was on the ground, and the ankle of her right foot was caught in someone's hand. "You still don't let me go!" Duguyan shouted with some embarrassment. One of her hands was still pressed on the edge of her skirt, and her face was flushed as she looked at the black-haired boy in front of her. "Okay, but let's make a deal first. I won't hold back if you attack again." As Han Li spoke, he let go of his left hand, and Duguyan took 2 steps back before regaining his balance. "No, Grandpa, what are you doing?" Duguyan ignored Han Li, but turned to look at his grandfather with an innocent expression on his face with a face of shame and anger. Without thinking, she knew it was her grandfather who was responsible. How could anyone fall from a high altitude and put her granddaughter in front of others? As a result, she subconsciously launched an attack, which led to the situation just now. She just felt so embarrassed now. "Hey? Yan, what's wrong?" Dugubo naturally pretended to be stupid. Of course he knew what his granddaughter meant, but how could he dare to admit it? His original intention was to see the reaction of the two people in close contact. After all, he turned around and almost bumped into Duguyan's grandmother, which was the follow-up. But what he didn't expect was that when Han Li saw his granddaughter falling in front of him, Han Li's expression didn't even change. Instead, he kicked her away with a fierce kick. Fortunately, Han Li didn't do anything harsh, and fortunately he asked his granddaughter to change her clothes before going out. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how it would end. Taking advantage of the break between Douluo and Douguyan's fight, Han Li took a close look at Douguyan. Douguyan has short dark purple hair, a handsome face, and looks very heroic. With a pair of green eyes, he looks quite strange. Of course, what impressed Han Li the most was her legs, which were very white and straight. Although he was not one of those BT gentlemen who thought everything he encountered was edible, he still felt that it was okay to give her a like. In addition, her waist looks very thin, which perfectly sets off her figure. It can only be said that the proportions of the body are perfect. It cannot be said that she is stunning, but she has a kind of enchanting charm. Alas, as expected, I still wrongly blamed Brother Xiaoyan in my previous life. I shouldn't despise, envy, him. What, he also called himself Xiaoyan a few days ago, so that's okay, he can only say that it's understandable. Over there, under Douguyan's insistence, Douluo made a lot of promises and finally made Miss Douluo let him go. As a result, Douguyan turned around and saw Han Li still sizing her up. She couldn't help but said in shame and anger, "What are you looking at? Are you still looking at it? Does it look good? It's not bad, you're pretty good looking. Besides, you were the one who attacked first, I was just defending." Han Li met her eyes and replied calmly. Hearing Han Li's answer, Douguyan was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect that she would hear such an answer. The key is, Han Li really didn't do anything, he just blocked the attack. Douguyan also knew that he actually didn't see anything. After all, she was wearing safety pants. And it was indeed her initiative to attack just now. Now that they didn't say anything and couldn't answer the question, what else could she do? Okay, I'll just take it as you complimenting me. Besides, you're not bad looking either. Douguyan could only pretend that nothing happened and replied angrily. Well, I actually feel the same way about this. Han Li nodded and agreed. What you say is quite interesting. Are you really just 7 years old as Grandpa said? Douguyan looked at Han Li who spoke seriously and teased. By the way, I still don't know your name? My name is Douguyan. After the teasing was over, Douguyan suddenly realized that she didn't seem to know the other person's name. My name is Han Li, and to be precise, my age is 7.5 years old. Han Li corrected. Is there any difference? Douguyan didn't understand his unnecessary persistence on this matter. Yes, there is a big difference. This is a way of counting in memory of an old friend in my memory. And I think half a year is enough for me to improve my level a little bit more. Han Li spoke matter-of-factly. Thinking that he was now at a higher level than himself, Douguyan was unable to refute for a moment. Are you envious? Han Li suddenly said. Envious? Douguyan was not the kind of person to be hypocritical. Hearing his words, he was stunned for a moment, then realized that he was talking about the speed of cultivation and answered straightforwardly. Then swear by the martial soul. Well, considering that the martial soul will evolve in the future, let's also add it in the name of your Douluo family. Han Li thought for a moment and said to the girl in front of him. Hey? What kind of martial soul evolution? And why do I swear by my martial soul? What kind of oath? Why is it in the name of the Douluo family? Douguyan frowned, suppressing his instinctive displeasure, and looked at Han Li doubtfully. Han Li frowned when he heard her words. He glanced at Douluo first. Considering that he had already sworn an oath, he might not have said something, so he moved his gaze to Guangling. Guangling coughed slightly in embarrassment. Xiao Li, you came in a hurry, and she asked to come with you on the spur of the moment. I didn't have time to explain to her. Didn't you say it yet? No wonder Douguyan had this reaction. In the next 5 minutes, Han Li explained the agreement he and Douluo had reached to the new members, and explained the previous things clearly while Douguyan was dizzy. So, do you understand now? Han Li looked at Douguyan, and Douguyan nodded in confusion. Well, since you understand, then swear, so that we can get along better in the future. Han Li looked like a business person, and he would not think that Douguyan could be an exception just because she was a girl. Douguyan didn't think there was anything wrong when she heard his words. She subconsciously turned her head to look at Douluo, wanting to ask for his opinion. In fact, she still felt like she was living in a dream, and she always felt that the world seemed different from what she knew before. Douluo nodded his head at her, confirming her thoughts. With a backbone, Douguyan no longer hesitated. She believed that her grandfather would not harm her. Immediately, she made a martial spirit oath according to Han Li's requirements. Of course, she did not forget to bring the family name. Han Li nodded in satisfaction until her oath was over. For Douluo, such an action was enough for the time being. There was no way. His good son had not shown up again since he took the initiative to contact him. Otherwise, he could contact him and make a version of the Heavenly Dao Oath of Douluo continent together. Now he could only make do with it. Very good, Sister Yan, welcome to join us. We will be one of our own in the future. Han Li suddenly became a different person. He smiled enthusiastically at Duguyan and took the initiative to extend his right hand. Shaking hands is also a greeting and a friendly etiquette between nobles and high-level officials in Tiandu. Yes, one of our own. Duguyan stretched out her hand and shook it lightly with him. Seeing him skillfully switching expressions, he was completely different from before, and was a little at a loss. Little girl, you will get used to it in the future. Guangling smiled and blinked at her. So far, he was quite satisfied with Duguyan's performance. It was quite to his liking, and he also gave up the idea of taking the initiative to do something bad. Chapter 71. Seeing Guangling's attitude become visibly kinder to her, Duguyan became a little restrained. After learning the real situation from Han Li, she knew very well that Guangling's change was entirely due to the oath she had just made. A level 98 Super Douluo, this is the most powerful person she has ever seen. She bowed to Guangling a little embarrassedly, as an apology for her childish behavior before. Even if she had 2 more grandfathers, it would not be enough for His Majesty Guangling to fight. Okay, don't worry about me. Next, you will listen to Xiao Li's arrangements. Guangling waved his hand and took the initiative to walk to the side. He also saw that the little girl would be a little uncomfortable if he was there. Han Li looked at the grandfather and grandson who were staring at him in front of him, and had no intention of greeting. After looking at Duguyan's flushed face, his eyes turned to Dugubo. Senior, please take Sister Yan back to the platform first. She can't bear the breath of the yin-yang eyes for the time being. If she stays there for too long, it may cause unnecessary damage to her body. Well, build a small wooden house for her and let her live there for a while. Han Li added. Hey, look at my brain, how could I forget this? Dugubo slapped his head, quickly grabbed Duguyan's arm and went to the platform. Do you want my help? Seeing the grandfather and grandson leave in a hurry, Guangling, who had been eavesdropping for a long time, couldn't help but ask. No, master, you are busy, I can go up by myself now. Han Li showed a mysterious smile to Guangling, and then, in Guangling's somewhat astonished eyes, he put his hands down, and red flames spurted out of his palms and soles, and quickly rose into the air and flew towards the platform. On the platform, Dugubo had just landed with Duguyan when he felt a strange fluctuation behind him, and there was also a loud sound. Duguyan also heard the strange sound, and turned her head curiously as soon as she landed. Then, the grandfather and grandson saw Han Li flying straight towards them from midair, and not far in front of them, the red flames on his palms and feet sprayed violently, and then Han Li stopped suddenly and landed safely from a height of half a meter. What kind of soul skill is this? / How can you fly? 2 voices came out of the grandfather and grandson almost at the same time, looking at Han Li in front of them in surprise. It's nothing, sorry, it's just a little bit of subtle use of the fire element, not presentable. Han Li showed a shy smile. Self-created soul skill. The grandfather and grandson looked at each other and asked in unison. Is it, but the requirements are quite high. The ability to control the fire element must be very strong, and the mental strength must also meet the standards. It can't be easily taught to others. Han Li saw the flickering eyes of the 2 people, how could he not know what they were thinking, and took the initiative to add. Oh! The grandfather and grandson heard his words and showed regretful expressions at the same time. However, Duguyan did not give up just like that. Instead, she blinked her eyes, smiled, and then flirted at him. Little brother Han Li, my sister and grandpa are now your people. You should not mind teaching us some small tricks that we can learn in the future. Han Li listened to the bad speech of the girl in front of him and could not help but glance at her. Why does it sound like cha-cha? Also, your speed of changing your face is not bad, or is itself familiar? I remember you seem to be very cold? What else do you mean that she and Dugubo are both his people? What kind of tiger and wolf words are these? The words are too easy to be misunderstood. And little brother, hee, 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west, don't bully the young, it doesn't take 30 years at all, you wait until you become an adult. Han Li was in turmoil, but the expression on his face did not change at all. He looked at the two of them calmly and ignored Dugu Yan's words and small movements. We'll talk about this later. If you can learn it, I don't mind teaching you. Now, let's talk about the evolution of the martial soul. Dugu Yan, who was a little dissatisfied with her charm being ignored, threw away her little emotions when she heard this and listened carefully. Senior, the evolution of the martial soul is still the same as before, so I won't explain it in detail. However, I would like to ask for your opinion on the result. Han Li looked at Dugu Bo. Dugu Bo's face was full of doubts, and he said in surprise, Opinion, I have no opinion, just do it according to your thoughts, is there any other problem? No, you misunderstood. Han Li shook his head, first calmed the two people's minds, and then continued, what I want to ask you is, do you plan to evolve your martial soul into a dragon, or continue to keep the snake martial soul? Is there still a choice? Dugu Bo asked in surprise. Of course, don't forget my ice and fire dragon Bao. Han Li smiled. Dugu Bo's eyes lit up, and he blurted out without thinking, of course it's a snake. What's so good about dragons? Besides, I still know the basic situation of the green phosphorus snake. Even if it evolves into a dragon, it may not be stronger than the blue lightning Tyrannosaurus rex. Instead of evolving into something weird, it's better to continue to delve into snake spirits. Maybe my Dugu family will also be the pinnacle of snake spirits in the future, and it may not be worse than other top beast spirits. Yeah, Grandpa is right. If you want to do it, then do the strongest. Dugu Yan was also on the side, with bright eyes, as if he had thought of a bright future. Oh, I forgot, this young lady is also strong, Han Li thought silently. Okay, that's no problem. When the time comes, I will help you suppress the dragon's aura so that you can better complete the devouring. Han Li looked at Dugu Bo and said seriously. With your help, I will be more confident. Dugu Bo answered with a smile, while stroking his modest beard in a great mood. By the way, it won't have any negative impact on you, right? Dugu Bo then looked at Han Li's hands worriedly. After a day and night of suppression, the two-color dragon scales on the back of Han Li's hands had basically fallen off. However, compared to before, the skin on the back of his hands was still darker than other parts. This was why Dugu Yan had not noticed it before. It's okay. Maybe when the time comes, I can use the opportunity of confrontation to draw out the hidden aura that is difficult to remove, so that I can recover faster. Han Li took the initiative to answer. This was one of the reasons why he asked. He would not treat his future partners and friends badly just because he was greedy for the snake girl. Is that so? That's really good. It kills two birds with one stone. Even your kid's brain doesn't know how to grow it. It's really useful. After observing his expression, Dugu Bo was completely relieved. Han Li would not lie about such an important matter. This was the consensus he reached after communicating with Guangling. Chapter 72. Seeing that the two had just exchanged a short time and it was confirmed, Dugu Yan, who had only briefly understood some of the situation, couldn't help but want to ask more. Okay, let's talk about this when we eat. We have to build a cabin first, otherwise, you may have to rest in the open air tonight. Han Li pointed to the darkening sky and reminded. Ah, okay. Dugu Yan remembered the business at this time. She didn't want to sleep in the wild. At this time, Guangling also landed on the platform following the sound. The four of them were soul masters, and there was no shortage of materials around. In just half an hour, a cabin was formed. Han Li also took out a few flat stones from the storage wristband to serve as beds and furniture. After everything was done, Guangling also took out the food he had prepared before, and the four of them had dinner while talking and laughing. Due to the participation of Dugu Yan, the three of them had to spend more time talking and explain some things in detail again. She was amazed from time to time, and her eyes were full of brilliance. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, 6 days passed in a flash. During this period, Dugu Bo's body was riddled with holes, and after a lot of nourishment, he finally recovered some vitality for a short time. It was time to evolve his martial soul. A low voice came from Dugu Bo's mouth. Seeing that she was much calmer, the three of them fell directly downwards. Nearly an hour passed like this. During this period, Dugu Bo's brows were frowned from time to time, and there was a look of pain on his face, but fortunately his breath and physical signs looked very stable. If it still has an impact in the future, he is ready to abandon it directly, even if his strength will be reduced. He was really scared by the poison, and another reason was that Duguyan would also evolve his martial soul in the future, and he had to confirm a safe enough way for his granddaughter, even if it was not so strong. Of course, if necessary, if you can't suppress it, you can also abandon it temporarily. The master will take over the subsequent handling of the problem, and the priority is to save your life. Han Li solemnly reminded again. There is also Duguyan. In the past few days, he has become a little familiar with Han Li and Guangling. Although the two of them were in a state of cultivation most of the time, they would still take a break during mealtime and when checking Dugubo's physical condition. At this time, she would come up and take the initiative to communicate. Okay, let's get started. Of course, Duguyan was not opposed to this. She was quite interested in Han Li, and after a few days of contact, she also vaguely grasped the little tricks of getting along with Han Li. Otherwise, if this node was missed, Han Li was really afraid that his body would not be able to bear it, and if there were any problems, his medical knowledge was all based on precious medicinal materials, and he could not afford to delay. Dugubo, who had rehearsed many times in his mind, did not hesitate, nodded to the master and apprentice, took out the 9th grade dragon Ganoderma, water, that had been plucked of leaves, stuffed it directly into his mouth, chewed it quickly, and swallowed it directly. Little girl of the Dugu family, take the time to prepare the food inside and arrange it on the plate, waiting for lunch. Guangling also threw a small ring with some food in it. After Han Li asked and explored Dugubo's physical condition again, he let go. He glanced at Duguyan, who seemed to be more nervous than Dugubo, and said, Sister Yan, you stay on the platform first. Master and I will accompany you down. Don't worry, you will be fine. Okay, I'll wait for you here. Come on, Grandpa. And he actually has a strong desire to share, and he also likes to be praised. Although he always pretends to be very calm, the smile in his eyes and the slightly upturned corners of his mouth undoubtedly reveal his preferences. How is it? Dugubo and Duguyan looked at him nervously. In fact, in Han Li's eyes, Dugubo is a very strange existence. He is also a strange player in the whole Douyi. After a simple breakfast, the four of them gathered on the platform. When Han Li usually talks, he always likes to whet people's appetite first, and then take the initiative to speak after arousing people's emotions. He seems to enjoy this feeling. Fortunately, this action saved him. His poisonous essence was locked inside and not spread all over his body. Otherwise, with his weak anti-poison ability, he might have died long ago. The moment the two breaths came into contact, an illusory dragon roar sounded in the bodies of the Ice and Fire Dragon Bao and Dugubo at the same time, and the green giant snake behind Dugubo seemed to be aroused, opening its mouth and roaring at the two people below. Then, he closed his eyes and quickly began to refine the medicinal power. Duguyan glanced at the two people, and his tense expression became much more relaxed, and he replied softly. Now, melt it for me. The outer periphery of the Danzu was still wrapped with some dark green liquid. It was obvious that the stubborn poison forced out by him had not been completely integrated into it. Danzu, at most, can be used as a one-time large-scale killing force. This is the consensus reached after he and Dugubo discussed. On the one hand, she was indeed worried about her grandfather's condition. On the other hand, this was also Dugubo's implicit hint. After all, the grandfather and grandson were bound to Han Li, and it would definitely be a good thing to have more contact and build a good relationship. Moreover, taking advantage of this martial soul evolution, Dugubo also wanted to try to adjust the martial soul structure. Dugubo patted his chest and made a loud sound, looking very confident. The Danzu that he condensed in his body was very similar to the soul core 10,000 years later, but perhaps because it was an unconscious behavior, and he was mainly trying to avoid poison. Martial soul possession. Okay, no problem. Dugubo nodded without hesitation. The three of them were comforting her in different ways, which relieved Duguyan's nervousness. So although the Danzu had a certain connection with herself, it could not be used to assist in cultivation, but became a useless existence. Dugubo muttered in a low voice, his eyes became narrow and long, and his whole body exuded a sense of coldness. An illusory projection of a green phosphorus snake rose behind him, hissing and spitting out his tongue. Han Li and Guangling watched quietly on the side, without making a sound to disturb them. This was just the beginning, and they hoped that the next step would be smooth. This was the plan they had discussed in the past few days, but Han Li emphasized it again. Suddenly, Douluo opened his eyes, and at the same time, his mouth opened slightly, and a green danzu flew out of his mouth. Guangling and Han Li, who were standing by, heard his voice and stopped watching the show. They summoned their martial souls at the same time. One threw a ball of icy light at the danzu in front of Douluo, and the other mobilized the martial soul aura with all his strength and pressed it hard towards Douluo himself. Seeing that Douluo was ready, Han Li said no more. Roar! Han Li had no intention of persuading him. First, the martial soul evolution he proposed was actually an alternative way to change Douluo's development model. Second, he didn't know how the soul core was condensed. For him, he didn't like this kind of time bomb-like thing. He preferred controllable power, even if it was temporarily weaker. Don't worry, Yan Yan, Grandpa will definitely succeed. The situation is good, and after the toxins are suppressed, they are temporarily stable and will not affect the next thing. When the time comes, you just need to seize the opportunity to merge these poisons with your danzu. Chapter 73. Seeing this scene, Douluo and Han Li were not surprised but happy. Stimulating the characteristics of the martial soul was something the two had discussed in advance. Douluo nodded to Han Li, feeling the vigorous medicinal power in his body, and immediately jumped to the open space behind him without hesitation, and directly activated the martial soul true body. A 30-meter-long, green snake as thick as a water tank instantly appeared on the open space, actively guiding the next changes. Han Li did not follow, and after his right eye flashed red, he chose to stay where he was and put away his martial soul. Xiao Li? What's wrong? Guangling turned his head and looked at him. This was different from what they had agreed. I seem to have overestimated the 9th grade Dragon Ji. Perhaps it is also because Senior Douluo's martial soul has evolved once. He is the king of snakes. The situation is better than expected, and he doesn't need my help. Han Li replied softly, and he seemed to be in a good mood. What about your aura? Guangling frowned. It's still a little bit stimulated. I can be more relaxed and the recovery time will be faster. Besides, there is Sister Yan. She may need my help more. Han Li replied with a smile. Well, that's good. Guangling said nothing and turned to look at the bead that he had frozen in mid-air. The color of the bead was much darker than before. Although the soul power fluctuations were also much more violent than before, it was still under control. Wait, it should be soon. You see, the senior has taken the opportunity to transform the martial soul structure. Han Li pointed to the jade phosphorus snake king whose body surface was already stained with a layer of light blue not far away. He is really cruel. He killed all the poisonous snakes around here. The day before yesterday, he couldn't find other poisonous snakes, so he forcibly dismantled his little green snake. Guangling looked at the big snake in the open space not far away, and sighed. Yes, Senior Douluo is indeed cruel, the kind that is cruel to himself. Thinking of the crazy plan proposed by Gu Dubo before, Han Li could not help but nod in agreement. In fact, according to his original intention, with the help of the power of the fairy grass, the poison sac can be strengthened and the control ability can be enhanced. In the future, he only needs to pay attention to the activation mode of the poison. After all, Douluo is already a titled Douluo, and the room for improvement of the poison contained in his martial soul is actually quite limited. As long as he uses the fairy grass to curb the backlash and re-regulate his body, it will be fine. Instead of taking risks, it is better to calm down and study how to use poison to attack reasonably without damaging himself. As for Douluo, Han Li originally planned to take her to obtain the 8 spider lance later. With the external soul bone, her blood inheritance problem will be solved directly, and it can even be directly strengthened and utilized in reverse, without considering the subsequent problems. But Douluo proposed other ideas for Douluo's perfect evolution. He wanted to preserve the toxicity of the green phosphorus snake as much as possible during the evolution process, and strengthen the venom glands and venom sacs outside the body through the power of the fairy grass, and it would be best to separate them so that the toxins would not participate in the internal circulation and change the previous soul power operation route. If it is really impossible, he will settle for the second best and directly abandon the venom glands for evolution. Hearing his words, Han Li and Guangling couldn't help but look at each other, a little shuddering. Even Han Li admired his idea. You know, even with the fairy grass as a foundation, Douluo's idea is essentially a disguised way of artificially changing the structure of the martial soul. Isn't he afraid that the martial soul will collapse directly? After Han Li raised this point, Douluo said that it was not a big problem, and told the two that he had actually artificially changed the structure of the martial soul, but the appearance was not very obvious, and he also told the source of his idea. When he was young, he met a soul master. When that guy was absorbing the soul ring, his body couldn't resist and he fainted unconsciously, and as a result, the martial soul underwent similar changes. After the frog spirit merged with the failed to absorb toad spirit ring, similar venom glands appeared on the spirit body. He found it difficult to accept such a change in his spirit. When he was trying to obtain spirit rings, he consciously changed the position of the venom glands and hid them. He even had the wild idea of obtaining the venom of venomous snakes, trying to change his fate and find a new way. As a result, he failed to hunt for spirit rings. Before he died, he met Douluo, who also came to obtain spirit rings, and told him about his experience. It was from his experience that Douluo got inspiration. Later, he consciously strengthened and adjusted the venom glands of the green phosphorus snake by obtaining spirit rings, and derived his practice and attack methods that were different from other green phosphorus snake spirit masters. But he didn't expect that he strengthened too much, which exceeded the limit that his spirit could bear, which led to the tragedy of the Douluo family. Well, in general, the green phosphorus snake martial spirit inherited by the Douluo family, starting from Douluo, has actually become somewhat different from ordinary green phosphorus snake spirit masters, which is why he dared to take action again. Perhaps this is why Douluo was able to evolve into the green phosphorus snake king with a high-level martial spirit and became a title. While the master and the apprentice were talking, Douluo finally made a big move. Amid the roar of the green snake, two huge wings slowly grew from the side and back of the upper body of the snake, like large eagle wings, but covered with feathery green scales. Refer to the appearance of the Tang snake. Let go of the Danzu, I should be able to control it. The big green snake suddenly turned its head towards the two of them and uttered human words. Good. Guangling didn't hesitate. After hearing his words, he controlled the pill wrapped in ice light in midair and pushed it towards the big snake. When the Danzu came close, Douluo did not choose to swallow it. Instead, he waved his newly born pair of wings and established an energy cycle with it. Soon, a pair of wings that were only light green before, slowly turned into dark green under the influence of the Danzu, and finally became close to black, and the Danzu completely disappeared. Xiao Li, is he successful? Guangling looked at Han Li, who was a little confused. That's right. Senior Douluo should have condensed all the poison glands and poisonous attack capabilities into the wings on his back, creating a separate cycle. The soul power cycle itself does not participate in the operation of poison, but only releases the soul. It was only briefly fused on the wings when he was using his skills, so he wouldn't be poisoned just by using his soul power in the future. But, if he continues to maintain his original attack method, he will still be poisoned. Han Li's right eye had quietly lit up, observing the movement of soul power in the big snake's body, and he spoke with a little helplessness. So he ate a quasi-immortal grass to extract the poison glands from Wuhan's body and replace them with wings? From now on, the wings will be his poison sacs and weapons? Whether he cuts others or himself, he will still hurt others the same way. It's just that the body and soul are no longer poisonous, is that right? Guangling expressed his understanding simply and roughly. Well, Master, you are right to say that. Han Li nodded and confirmed. Hey, you can't say that. The big snake not far away seemed to have heard their exchange, and instantly dispelled the martial soul's true form, turned into a flash of green light, and flashed to the two of them. Chapter 74. Guangling and Han Li looked at the figure who appeared in front of them at the same time, and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Douluo appeared in front of them, still dressed in grey robes, but his hair and beard had turned black, and his face looked as if he had undergone plastic surgery. All wrinkles and other wrinkles disappeared, and he suddenly became younger. In just over an hour, he evolved from the bad old man to a handsome middle-aged man. If they hadn't witnessed the evolution of his martial soul with their own eyes, the master and disciple would never have regarded the two as the same person. Seeing his master opening his mouth and preparing to fight with Douluo again, Han Li had a headache and quickly walked between the two. How about we go up first? Sister Yan is still waiting, so as not to worry her, we can go up and talk about anything together. Okay. The two looked at each other, and at the same time they showed their wings behind their backs and flew towards the platform above. Han Li glanced at the two people who had already set off, sighed softly, and slowly rose into the air and landed towards the platform. On the platform, Duguyan looked at Douluo, who had changed his appearance, and said with some uncertainty, "Grandpa." "Yan, of course it's me. What do you think? Did you see that Grandpa succeeded and made a wing that can take you to fly in the sky in the future?" Douluo did not fold his wings, but waved them left and right like a show-off, secretly still responding to the fact that Rigongling pointed out in front of his granddaughter that he could not fly. Guangling curled his lips, but seeing that Duguyan was also there, he still endured it and did not speak sarcastically. "It's really you, Grandpa, you suddenly become so young." Duguyan, who was used to his grandfather's old manner, was still a little uncomfortable for a while. He didn't pounce on him as usual, but he still showed a happy smile. "Ha ha ha, Grandpa's poison has been detoxified, his body has recovered, and he has naturally become younger." Douluo laughed heartily. He had not been as happy as he is today for many years. "Congratulations, Grandpa, you no longer have to worry about the backlash of your martial soul." Duguyan looked at Douluo, who was chatting like a teenager, and said sweetly, "Congratulations, Senior." Han Li also silently sent his blessings. "Okay, don't just stand around like that. Sit down first." Guangling had already found a chair and sat down first, greeting the three of them. After everyone sat down, Douluo looked at the three people staring at him and couldn't help but laugh. "Okay, I know you have questions to ask me. Just ask them, one by one." I'll come first." Duguyan spoke enthusiastically and took the first question. "Okay, Yan, tell me." Douluo looked at her fondly. "Grandpa, what happened to your wings?" Duguyan wanted to ask just now, but was interrupted by Guangling, and has endured it until now. "Wings, it's an accident of the evolution of the martial spirit. I didn't expect to grow wings, but after completely devouring the potion, the martial spirit suddenly grew wings. Simply, this is a good thing and is more beneficial to me. The plan went ahead and I kept it." Douluo thought for a moment and answered seriously. "That means I might grow wings in the future?" Duguyan asked excitedly. Douluo saw his granddaughter's happy look and couldn't help but glance at Han Li. He hadn't seen what he had prepared for Duguyan yet, so naturally he didn't dare to answer easily. Han Li noticed his little movement and nodded gently as confirmation. Douluo breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled, looked at Duguyan, and nodded fiercely. "Okay." Duguyan couldn't help but clenched her fist, she would be able to fly in the future. "Senior, after the martial soul evolves, you still retain such strong toxicity. Isn't it a bit risky? Or maybe something happened during the evolution that we don't know about?" Han Li asked speculatively. Hearing Han Li talk about this, a smile instantly appeared on Douluo's face. This was why he couldn't wait to release the martial soul's true form when he heard Guangling talking to Han Li. "Speaking of which, Xiao Li, I really need to thank you. The effect of the fairy grass you gave me is much stronger than I expected." Douluo stood up sincerely, and at the same time pulled Duguyan up, held down her who was still a little confused, and bowed deeply. Han Li quickly stood up to dodge, but was still forced to accept the gift. "Senior, let's talk properly. I can't bear the loss of my life like this." "No, you can afford it," Douluo said seriously. "Yan, please remember that your grandfather and I are still alive now because of Han Li. You must not have any small thoughts in the future. Do you understand?" Douluo turned to look at his granddaughter, his expression more serious than ever. Duguyan looked at his grandfather blankly, then at Han Li, and nodded solemnly, indicating that he had taken note of it. Han Li couldn't laugh or cry at the side. "What kind of thing is this? Even if you thank me, you have to explain the reason first. I, the client, am still confused. How about sitting down and talking? With the three of you standing, I seem a little out of place." Guangling took a sip of tea and put the cup back on the table. Although he didn't know what was going on, it didn't stop him from watching the show. "Good." Douluo turned to look at him and sat back down again. "Let's sit down too, Sister Yan." Han Li glanced at Duguyan, who was still a little dazed, and greeted. "Oh, okay." Duguyan also responded and sat back down. "Senior? It's time for you to tell me now. I'm still confused. What role did the water attributed Jupin Longji play in the evolution process?" Han Li looked at Douluo with some confusion, wanting to know the answer. "It turns out to be called Jupin Longji. Douluo murmured softly, and then his expression returned to normal. He looked at the three of them and began to explain. That dragon-like aura is pretty good. It's not as powerful as what I felt in Xiao Li's martial soul, but it's definitely not weaker than the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex. His expression became a little more serious and he continued, but the water attribute attached to it is very weak, but it is very extraordinary. Just a ray of essence in it made me what I am now. As he spoke, he was possessed by the martial soul again, and a ball of light blue soul power appeared in his hand, reaching out to the center of several people. Purification effect. Guangling stared at the mass of soul power for a long time. It seemed familiar, but not the same. He asked with some uncertainty. Yes, it is purification, and it is pure purification, purifying all negative effects. Well, of course, I only inherited this little bit. The soul power attributes have not been completely changed, and the recovery is very slow, so I can guarantee that I will not be affected by it. Toxic effects, and perhaps the resistance to negative effects will be stronger in the future. As he said that, Douluo scratched his head in embarrassment. But Han Li was already there, and he kept thinking, what kind of destined son is Douluo? His eldest son, don't sleep, open your eyes and see if you have given your luck to the wrong person. Douluo just gnawed on something that wasn't even a fairy grass. His martial soul had evolved and it still looked like the flying snake in his memory. So forget it. The key is that he forcefully gnawed out a weakened version of the ultimate water, the poison was gone, and he also brought the female slave with him, which strengthened it to an epic level. And what about himself? Evolving a martial soul has to be eroded by the blood and aura of the long-dead Dragon King. It cannot reach the divine level in one step. Is this the wrong script? For a moment, Han Li fell into deep suspicion. Chapter 75. Xiao Li? What's wrong with you? Guangling gently pushed Han Li, who had fallen into deep thought after Douluo finished speaking. Oh, it's okay, I was just thinking about something. Han Li's thinking was interrupted and he answered casually. Is it something important again? When Guangling heard this, his expression suddenly became tense. He looked at his precious apprentice without blinking his eyes, but there was no erosion or anything like that. His heart couldn't bear it. Feeling his master's nervousness, Han Li felt warm in his heart and chuckled, no, don't worry, master, it's just that senior's words reminded me of what I mentioned before. 9 grade Long Ji mutated under the influence of the ice and fire eyes. I'm thinking that since my predecessor has inherited the ability to purify, will I be able to turn ice into water and produce the same ability when I reach a certain level in the future? Hey, that makes sense. My ice elemental power is not weak, so can I do it too? Guangling's eyes lit up and he had the same idea. There is a high probability that it will not work. Guangling Divine Bao has inherited the cold properties of ice. Han Li answered silently in his heart, but he did not say his answer out loud. Let the master play slowly, maybe he will come up with something new. The Douluo in front of him is the best example. Now Douluo is his thug. If he is strong, he is considered strong. This is also a manifestation of luck. Han Li comforted himself in his heart. Then I would like to congratulate you again, senior. The road to becoming a super Douluo is now open to you. Han Li, who had forcibly comforted himself, looked at Douluo again with something strange in his eyes. It felt like he was watching himself wash a little, and then wash out a top-notch baby. Ha, that's right. And now that I have broken through to level 93, I will definitely be able to catch you at level 95. Don't worry, I'm here to ensure that no one can hurt you before I die. Douluo laughed heartily at first, and then promised with gratitude again. As senior said, I can just go and cause trouble. Han Li also joked with a smile. Ha ha ha, I don't dare to agree to this blindly, unless I add your master. Douluo also responded with a smile. If you add me, what else do you need? Guangling replied in disgust, and smiled after speaking. In the following time, several people asked some more questions, and Douluo's excitement after his breakthrough temporarily cooled down. By the way, Xiao Li, when the martial soul evolved before, only part of the dragon-like aura in your martial soul was drawn out. Do you want me to try it and see if the purification power can corrode your martial soul? Douluo turned around and asked. It's probably useless. After all, your ability is derived from the ice and fire eyes, but it doesn't hurt to try. Han Li stretched out his hand and handed it to Douluo. Sure enough, Douluo's soul power had no effect after wandering around in his body. Douluo couldn't help but shook his head and sighed, this ice and fire eye is really magical and scary at the same time. Several people nodded in agreement, and the atmosphere suddenly turned cold. Seeing that the three of them had fallen into silence, Han Li took the initiative to ask, by the way, Senior, Sister Yan's situation is still different from yours. She can't operate her martial soul body like you. The evolution you have figured out, is there a specific process for the journey? Do you want us to hear it? When Guangling and Duguyan heard his words, they couldn't help but cast their eyes on Douluo. Douluo sorted out his thoughts and then slowly spoke. I can't tell you the specific process, but I am sure that Yan will follow the same evolutionary path as me. First of all, our previous idea of stimulating the martial soul's characteristics was right. At that time, I noticed that the martial soul was more active than usual, and its connection with me was also closer. Then, try not to follow pure instinct to refine the medicinal power, but keep using your martial soul to try to swallow that energy. Use martial soul to swallow it. How to swallow it? Is there a specific soul power route? When I absorbed the fairy grass, why didn't I feel anything? Seeing that what he said was getting more and more mysterious, Guangling couldn't help but interrupt. Douluo didn't pay attention to his question, but answered seriously, I don't know, the soul power's route is no different from usual. I only had one thought in my mind at that time, which was swallowing the dragon with the snake, and then it worked. Immediately afterwards, he continued, the first time my martial spirit evolved, I was actually confused. Anyway, when I reacted, the martial spirit became the Jade Phosphorus Snake King, and it was the same this time. By the way, little one, when Li evolved, didn't he let Wuhan take the initiative to swallow him? If you don't believe me, ask him. Han Li also nodded. Douluo said that there was indeed no problem. He was in the same situation at the time. After he realized that the remaining will in it wanted to break through the martial soul, he refused to let other things pollute the martial soul, so he chose to actively refine it, and the ice and fire bow did indeed choose to devour and evolve as he thought. Then why didn't I notice anything? Guangling looked confused. Maybe it's because the types of fairy grass are different. Master, your plant only has pure ice elements. Although it is also affected by the aura of the ice and fire eyes, the star anise ice grass actively rejects other auras during its growth. Han Li guessed. Well, it's very possible. Douluo thought of most of the herbs Han Li had collected, which actually did not have the aura of dragons, and nodded in agreement. According to what you said, the little girl actually has to gamble on her luck. I hope she can succeed. Guangling shook his head, not optimistic that Duguyan could completely copy Douluo's operation. Well, that's true, but it's better than crossing the river by feeling the stones. Douluo did not refute, but looked at Duguyan and smiled. Actually, the situation is not that bad. You two are just thinking too much. For Sister Yan, whether she evolves towards the current martial soul of the senior or turns into a dragon martial soul naturally, it is a great improvement for her. At least she doesn't have to stick to the green phosphorus snake martial soul. And unlike the senior, her martial soul toxin is still dormant. In addition, she has deliberately adjusted her soul skills. Although her innate fetal poison is not easy to completely eliminate, it does not need to be completely eliminated, and there is no need for human intervention. As long as she can evolve successfully, she can directly suppress the toxin with her new martial soul. Unless she insists on taking the same route as the senior, the problem is no longer a problem. Han Li was a little confused by Guangling and Douluo's words. They subconsciously forgot that Duguyan's martial soul at this time was just the green phosphorus snake, an ordinary high-level martial soul, and it would be a profit no matter how it evolved. That's right. Douluo and Guangling reacted and suddenly realized that they subconsciously put Douluo's situation into Duguyan's consideration, and their starting point was wrong.